Order here in Grand Marais. Right off, we've got our agenda here, and we have our minutes as well. And I'd like to combine these going forward. This is another matter. We just have a consent agenda. Well, we'll do them one at a time. So first off, the agenda, if we could get a motion for that.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes, and then we have the minutes. Would somebody like to move that?
I do have a correction to
Oh,
the
there was a
minutes.
question. Great,
I'm looking for it. I circled it.
great.
In the paragraph, it says Commissioner Benson asked who was involved in creating the stormwater management plan. I believe that was Commissioner Hawkins.
There we go.
I'm correct.
All right. Well, with that correction, we'll have
I
that
will make the
motion.
motion to approve the minutes.
Great. We have a second.
I'll second.
Excellent. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so moving on to the big fun. We're going to start off here with the shoreline variance request from North House. And I know that you guys were looking to show us a little bit more about what you were, well, from our questions from last time, addressing those issues. And I have a feeling we might be looking this way to see more.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Right.
great. Good question.
So first, thanks again for having us back. Good to continue our conversation, and I, want to kind of underscore, I think what we, at our last meeting, lots of great questions came up, not just about the materials that were presented in our variance request, but how did you guys end up here? What's
Yeah.
the story about the evolution of campus, and why is there a need for 2 classrooms, and who really uses campus, and so why is campus designed this way, and things like that. And so providing some background about that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the history that led us here, and then
Yeah.
Bruce is going to dig into siting options, et cetera, that connect to why.
Yeah, Greg,
this
can I just
proposal-
pause you for
Yeah.
1 second, please? I just want to get a clarification. Mike, I don't have it here, but is there public comment as we do at city council beforehand, or how does that roll? Because obviously we have an audience
It's
today.
up to you. We don't have an open forum that we've done in these. Typically, you have public hearings at these meetings, so you don't need an open forum.
Okay,
This isn't the public hearing, but obviously there's people here that want to say something, so I think it's up to you however you want to handle it.
okay.
I'd like to hear from anybody that wants to say something. I don't know when an appropriate time to do that is.
Yeah,
Seems like
Maybe
maybe
since
before
we-
would be good, but
Well, I
Unless
would
it makes
just-
sense to get everybody kind of up to speed on theirs.
Yeah.
afterwards,
Yeah,
okay?
I think so.
let's
Okay.
bring them forward and then go. Okay,
enough.
great. Just wanted that clarification. Okay,
Great.
thank you. So go ahead, Greg.
Great, okay. So I'll talk a little bit, and then we'll do a little technological swingaroo, and then we'll jump over to Bruce. So, so again, how did we get here? I think it's interesting to, first of all, talk briefly about the site and where we came from. Up in the upper left-hand corner is a picture of the site, or our campus, or what is now our campus, probably in 1997. You'll see the 2 white buildings, big long white buildings, what are now red and blue, Forest Service buildings used for 6 decades. Adjacent to it, the Eckel property owned by Tommy Eckel, and you can see his old fish house there, and what is the White House. And then you can also see then the next adjoining piece of property with the Scott fish house, and then the fish house that Harley and Shelley Tofty owned and managed and eventually replaced. And there's from the water view, if you like a scenic view, down to the left. And obviously, in the past 25 years, that part of Grand Marais, and indeed lots of parts of Grand Marais, have continued to evolve. I mean, as all communities evolve. To the right, so what kind of things have happened? Well, a number of things. Tommy Eckel's fish house got run over, as maybe everybody remembers. And so in the drawing to the right, you can see, and so we came to the city and asked for a variance request to site that building a little bit closer to the water. And so you can see it in the bottom right-hand picture. You can see that it's kind of lighter colored. The blue building's blue, the red building's red. But you can see that at that point, actually, for instance, again, Harley and Shelley Tofty had not replaced the other fish house that was right there. That comes later on in the saga. So the site's evolved steadily. Bike trails have arrived, new intersections have arrived. That's part of what's happened in this part of the neighborhood. And so some people have asked, well, hold on, so why did you buy the dockside parcel anyway? Well, tell us that part of the story. And and the simplest part of that story is North House has been growing very steadily since the earliest days, and not just in the summer season. So what is this chart? This is a chart that shows the number of students who come to campus in every month of the year and the number of days that they're on campus, but over a decade. And so in January, the lower left-hand column, it's 126 user days, right? So that could be 3 students each for 40 days or 4 students each for 30 days. January's user days tripled over the course of 10 years. Why does Greg Wright like this chart? Because it shows that North House has grown pretty much in every month of the year in the past decade. It's shown that most of that growth has actually been in the non-summer season, which is an asset for us. It turns out we like running a school year-round. It turns out I think it's an asset for the entire community. And it shows that actually that coursework obviously is a huge core of what we do. But I think what a lot of people don't always remember when they drive past campus, and they go, "Oh, there's a lot of cars there again," is they go, "Well, that must be mostly people I don't know." And I actually believe that couldn't be further from the truth. North House also hosts community events. Thousands of people arrive on our campus for community events. Great example, if you want to come down and contra dance during the Wooden Boat Show or Winter's Gathering Unplugged, you can do that. If you want to come down and be part of a small boat tour during the Wooden Boat Show, you can do that. If you want to come down and help raise money for the Cook County Nordic downhill ski team, you can do that during Winter's Gathering in the Great Gear Swap. If you want to come down and listen to live music under Big Top Tent on the Shore Lake Superior, you can do that. All of those things happen in North House, and these aren't just for students. This isn't just for people who come from afar. 10% of our students come from the North Shore, but many, many, many neighbors come down, whether it's for the winter solstice pageant, et cetera. And coursework, events, these are key drivers of what our facility needs. We need to make these things work if we're going to work. And that said, if you thought that was all of North House, that's still not all of North House. Since the earliest days that we've been here, we've focused on serving local youth, especially through schools, and growing more and more in other ways as well. Since 1998, every 3rd, 4th, and 5th grader in Cook County has come down to North House. In the past 15 years, that's been entirely free. Tonight as we're meeting, who's over on the North House campus right now? A bunch of kids in our after-school program. Not 2 sessions anymore, now 3. We have a summer camp program. So local youth are a huge part also. And why does our facility need to evolve and grow? Because we serve lots of kinds of people, including local kids, including local community members, but also visitors from afar. And this is part of how we make our living. It's one of the ways our community makes our living. Now, through the master planning process, again, we bought the dockside parcel 5 years almost ago now. How did we think about, well, what do we want to become? What's the goal? How does this work? And the simple answer is you go through what's called a master planning process. You think about where you are, where you want to go, and what the things are. And one of the things we did is we went and visited a bunch of peer institutions that are known around the world for the work they do, like North House is now known. We went and visited the Wooden Boat School on Maine. Pretty cool place, pretty beautiful place. You know what it reminded of me? Me of home, right? Went and visited the Penland School of Craft and the John C. Campbell School, folk school in Appalachia. And what did they say? They said, "Oh my God, we're so glad you're finally here. We've been wanting to meet you." We went and visited Vesterheim, a Norwegian museum in northeastern Minnesota and northeastern Iowa, and they said, "How can we collaborate more?" And so North House has become an organization that's got lots of connections. And what's cool is at every one of these places, They were inspiring places, incredibly beautiful classrooms with great gear to inspire people in their work, and of course, always improving their campuses, because this is how you continue to thrive and grow as an organization, as any business, as a nonprofit. So the key things that, so kind of coming back to why does North House need classrooms? Well, this has been part of our course, and part of our evolution has been driven by coursework. In the earliest days, we had two buildings, the red building, the blue building, although they weren't red and blue back then, right? And we literally put 2 classes in both classrooms because we didn't have a choice. And classes weren't big enough. So we started with 4 classrooms, in a sense, 2 times 2. And we went through, after Tommy Eccles' fish house got run over, we added a classroom. We went through a period where we actually grew campus through a process called Raise the Roof, a campaign. And we added 2 more classrooms. And so now eventually we were up to 6. All classrooms operating independently. When we purchased the green building, we successfully moved our number of classrooms up to 8. And our next step, our next goal, is to add 2 quality classrooms while also removing 2 classrooms that are no longer functional for us. Best example of this, the upstairs of what used to be Tommy Eccles' fish house. You can fit kind of 6 people around a table up there. It's got a great view. It's not fully accessible. And not many classes at North House anymore are 5 students and 1 instructor. It just doesn't work that way anymore. So we need to take that classroom offline, find a better solution for it. So, and working classrooms, of course, connect to the world of what makes North House work. I mean, there is a financial model. This is a chart from our 2019 annual report. It underscores a simple fact: the blue triangle furthest to the right. That's tuition and event income. Almost half of our income comes from that. Another 15% comes from membership. Another 12% comes from granting organizations. Why do people support the work of the school? Because we teach classes, because we bring the story of craft alive. So almost 3/4 of the finances that power the school are connected to the classrooms. They're kind of the drivers of our mission, connected to our campus, the drivers of our space. But I just want to underscore, this is not just about money. This is not just about growing. This is about trying to take care and be a great presence on the harbor, our home. And so, there are issues we're trying to address. Right now, the site is a big gravel parking lot. Vehicles are right next to Lake Superior. Water washes off in big storms. There's no stormwater management. And there's really no public access. And our campus is about public access. So what kind of things are part of our design? We talked about these last time. From an environmental perspective, there's permeable pavers, there's a living roof, we have stormwater capture, we're working on shoreline stabilization, and our goal is to make the site fully functional for all the neighboring businesses. Not just for North House, but for the Angry Trout, for the North Shore, North Superior Fisheries, for Fisherman's Daughter. And there's other things that we aspire to do with this project. Have solar panels, create public access easily and safely down to the harbor. Obviously, take care of the fish house, in this case, by finding a new home for it where it can be cared for and highly visible to the rest, to the people who visit our community and to us, our community. And then obviously, we want to continue to work with Angry Trout, who we've partnered with, so that they can become a year-round business. So that's just a little bit of the background, why classrooms, how does this work financially, where did this come from? And now Bruce is going to dig into some of the details about what's it look like, right?
Yes. Thank you. Hopefully this will load up quickly here. There we go. Fantastic. Okay. Glasses so we can see. So, what I want to do is take you, without dragging you through the entire process, show you a little bit how the sausage was made, in terms of why we got to this point, approaching it as we do as design professionals. We obviously don't have any skin in the game other than we're trying to make all these different things kind of work to the betterment of everybody. Obviously, our client, the North House, is a driver there. So what you see here, and Greg mentioned this, and he did very well in terms of this master planning and actually pre-design process. This is a few years ago, we actually started this process. And at that time, as professionals, we look at everything, the whole campus, and we're not looking just at where to put buildings. We're looking at how to maintain buildings better, how circulation works, what's safe, what isn't. And so to really condense it down for our topic today, or tonight, is, the findings. One is, as Greg mentioned, we needed 2 classrooms to replace 2 inefficient classrooms and not working very well. They need to be average about 1,200 square feet. And that has to do with how they work. Remember, they have big items sometimes of equipment and movement for safety with sharp tools and stuff. Plus, at times, you have to have a certain size so they work with students, little kids, and they have certain area requirements. So it seemed that made sense. That's the 1,200 square feet. So we're going, okay, 2 buildings, or 2 classrooms, 1,200 square feet. Also, as Greg has mentioned, with the community event space, the idea was how can we also, because when I say we, it's everybody at North House, we rent a tent every year that is very expensive. Can we do something that actually is more economical by building something flowing for? We wanted for like 300 or so people. We can't fit that on the site. That doesn't work. And so we tried to figure what could we do, and we figured, okay, 150 is kind of our minimum. So then we said, okay, let's see how we can get 150 people at tables. So those are kind of what we call the programmatic aspects of what this building should be sized, and that's how we kind of determine that. And then during that too, it's also, where's the location for this? And of course, recently purchased property was certainly a prime, option. Also, we did look at other places on some of it, even on the city side, across the street. None of those really seem to work for some obvious reasons when we don't own some property, and the fact that safety of students moving back and forth across 61. Even with the new improvements, it's still not great to have students moving back and forth. So it seemed to make sense for us to go down to the Fish House, the dockside property. So with that, so now we're starting to say, okay, we're starting to understand our problem. And then so our concerns are just like what most businesses would be, et cetera, trash and deliveries. And not only is it for North House, as Greg has mentioned, we met with the fishermen, we met with the dockside folks, we met with Angry Trout, and determined what they needed as well. And of course, it's both deliveries and trash removal, not just, again, North House. Emergency vehicle access. There's lots of stuff going down here. We obviously want to make sure that we get ambulances in and make them turn around very easily. Pedestrian safety, quality user experience. That's where obviously the lake is everything, the harbor. And then, of course, we're interested in environmental concerns, and Greg mentioned 2 of those really is primarily the energy efficiency, solar panels, how the building should be oriented. So then we're starting to think, well, maybe it should be oriented east-west so we get the full roof slope for that, and aesthetics. We want to make sure it fit in the harbor. So you can see, these are 6 of the primary concerns that we have when we start the planning process. So what we then move into is the more detailed elements of it. And so we say, okay, when we develop the plan, you can see this is where we kind of ended up. And you can see to get the tables in, and these are at minimum 5-foot clearance, what you're typically do in a hospitality setting. We barely get the 150. In this case, there's even no room for like a podium or a head table, so to speak, but at least it kind of fits. And then the classrooms, it works out to an average of 1,200 square feet. We divided it the way we did. Those are folding partitions. At times, they need a larger classroom, not unlike the red building. So that was an idea of here's, how we can accomplish the program. So we're averaging 1,200 square feet, and you can see there's no room really to spare with that. So you can see the size, 42 by 72. And if you look at the green box, I hope you can see it, that's about the size of the red building. So you can kind of understand, the kind of relationship. So it is a little bit bigger. Primarily, it's so we can handle storage, a toilet, vestibules, et cetera. So that's where a lot of that goes into, and accommodate the tables. So that once we kind of come up with this idea, and I'm kind of, giving you the Reader's Digest version, we went through multiple iterations of this too. We say, okay, we have our plan that seems to make sense. Of course, at the same time, we are working at the site. So what I want to do now is I'll show you some iterations, like 4 options of what we looked at in terms of the site. just to give you a general idea of how we did it, okay? And so I dug up some old drawings, I modified some just to kind of help tell that story for that, okay? So the first, I should probably go through. So overall site, I think everyone understands exactly where we're at. The red box in the lower right-hand corner is where we're talking. The little red dashed lines is the new driveway that was put down. And you can see what we overlaid was the Highway 61 improvements, which is where this whole issue in a way kind of became, a hot item for it, when all of a sudden now we realize that the driveway that used to be kind of like a circle drive, if you will, is taken away. The MnDOT said, no, this is too dangerous an intersection to have trucks, cars, whatever, pulling out there. That's not going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And here, here's what we can do to help make it work. And so they obviously said, well, we'll give you these 3 driveways, one off the side into the lower level, obviously one for Angry Trout, and then of course the existing one for the far west side of the campus. So you can see that's generally the area, okay? So I'm going to focus on just our site here so everyone can kind of focus in, but I wanted to give everyone the general overall view. Okay, so what I did is I tried to annotate this in a way that can go through some of the things again that we look at when we're looking at how to address site issues. So I'll start at the top. So you can see that we basically X'd out those 3 driveways. So we're going to have 4 driveways. We had 4 driveways, and now with this we only have 2, one to west and one to east. So from a pedestrian safety standpoint, the school says, okay, well we'll work with 2. This is great for pedestrian safety. The least cars you have pulling up, the better. And as you know, when you come up steep drift and stop, that's where people get hit on bikes and everything. So you want to be very careful with that, and that's why you limit these. So we've got to 2 now. The one on the right was in agreement with Angry Trout. So that's carefully graded and carefully built. So we actually have a nice slope going up. So it flattens out at the top. It's very safe. But that was a deal that 2 businesses actually made an agreement, so it works for everyone down at the bottom. So that's the red stuff at the top. So then the yellow bars, those are areas that actually we need 10 to 12 feet of clearance between buildings, and that's from a code, a life safety code. In other words, so buildings, if one catches on fire, it's less likely for the other one to catch on fire, and that's a state requirement. And so our uniform building code, so we follow that as well. We go, okay, well, we can't build here, so we can't push it up super tight. Then the green are the 4 areas that are kind of key in terms of service, garbage, deliveries, etc., for the 4 businesses. It's the Fisherman, Angry Trout, Fisherman's Daughter, and of course North House over on the left there. And so we said, okay, well, those all have to remain accessible by trucks, so we can actually drop stuff off and pick stuff up. So that takes care of that. Then if you look at the blue, we go, okay, where are the primary circulation routes? And so the one on the right is something that's always happened, but now it's being encouraged even more with the developments that Angry Trout is doing to actually funnel their guests both ways. The arrow should probably go both ways so people can move back and forth between the 2 business properties. It's encouraged. The lower left, we already have folks coming from the campground coming across. And as part of the master plan process, the north-south one that goes up to the little blue dot, that has become a major pedestrian throughway for the campus, but also for folks coming into campus from the city and coming from the campground. It's a safe way to get up and on to 61, and there'll be more signage, et cetera. So it really is a place of welcome where we encourage the community to come down into. It's not a barrier. It's going to be very inviting, and of course it is. So so we were thinking about how does pedestrians move. So then with that circulation is very important. So a couple other things. The red shaded portions of the other buildings, I think we talked about this last time, everyone realized that at some point we'd have to come and ask you folks for a variance because it would be too difficult to build back behind that. And of course there are some precedents, so we figured it's a safe bet that we can move into that to some degree. Of course we realized that we had to come to you. And so that's what we're doing now. This is the process that we've developed. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you is that yellow line. Architects and designers, many times when we're faced with these issues of what's the right setback, many times we'll say, okay, well, I know there's a line that's been set. Other people have kind of taken, advantage of it before. We strike a line and say, as long as we don't violate this line, at least there's a logic to it, right? And so we said, let's at least follow this logic. So that's why that line's there, and you'll see that again, because we tried to respect that. So now I'm going to show you the 4 different plans, that we did. So let's move on. So the very first one that we did, and actually started with the master plan, was something much like this, which is a north-south orientation. And in the analysis of that, and I don't have all of those, the areas that we are concerned about here is, of course, the left-hand, my cursor works here.
Is the green line what the yellow line was in the previous?
It was, thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, some of the colors will jump around a bit, so thank you for that. And then you can see the red line, which is the 40-foot or so setback, and that's really what we're talking about in terms of what we're hoping to cross. So this was, okay, let's respect that green line. Let's do the best we can. We have to keep the circulation open, but then we go, well, this is really hard. We really can't service this with a truck. We have to get in, then we can't back truck up into this area. And as you can see from this one turning diagram, we can't get a truck in there to do an easy, or you can't even do a 3-point turn that way. So it's like, well, this really doesn't work after all. But there's lots of ways to skin the cat. So we said, what if we did it this way? And I hope this comes up. Yeah. So then we said, and you can see it's a different drawing, but it's all part of the same. We said, what if we squeeze in this way? And if you look at this carefully, you can see the swing radius, and this is all done with auto. It's called auto turn. It's a computerized system that helps planners show how trucks can move.
Same dimensions on the building?
Yeah. Yep. So each one of those little things where it starts to touch a building, that's where you can almost guarantee that at some point someone will hit it. And so what we're saying is, ooh, this is really tight. And even though the building is held in this case about 25 feet from the boat barn that we call the boat barn now, that's the building on the right, you can't kind of pull in that tighter because we all know when you're buying a big truck, that you have those swings, and that's what that's trying to indicate. So it's like, wow, maybe this really doesn't work for us. So then we said, well, what's next? And we said, what if we switch it? Because then we say, well, the thing that's good about this, we still respect that line, but now we even get the benefits of the better energy to the roof, because we have solar panels all along the south facing, and it's like, well, this is a good advantage. Plus, I'm going to go back one. Problem with this, the top of the red building there, it's like 20 feet from the deck of Fisherman's Daughter. So those folks are they're staring at a building in that case. So we said, this is kind of interesting. You can see the green lines are starting to talk about some of the sight lines. So here, then we start thinking, okay, and then we ran essentially the same, kind of tests, and of course this still doesn't work. But we said, let's push it here, and then we tried this one. We said, well, maybe we can pull way up over into there, then back in, and this doesn't work actually at all, and we can't pull in between the two buildings, although it's a little bit better on the right. So we said, wow, we need to show something that works. Now the purple and green lines show that actually the further the building gets away from Fisherman's Daughter, actually the sight lines improve. And it's very easy. I mean, imagine you can have a hand in front of your face 3 inches away, even though it's very small, and it blocks everything. You put that out here, and all of a sudden you can see farther beyond. It's the same precedence, and of course you can see that difference, that it starts to open up any views that we might be concerned about. So we have 2 more to show how we did. So then we went, wow, what's next? So then we go, well, what if we do this? And if you can see it carefully at the bottom, we said, well, what if we split the difference? At least then we're being somewhat respectful of that magic green line, and did the turning radius, and you can see it's getting better. And we did a version here, and this one gets better because now you can see that first part, you're not trying on the left-hand side, you can see you're not peeling away part of the building. But it's like, this is like maybe one way that it works to actually get that working. You can see the opening of the view as well. So then we said, holy smokes, let's just show it works, and maybe that's what we have to go with, and that's why we're here today, is, oops, then we did another version, I'm sorry, then we did this, and pulls it in, and this is one of those cases where we're not really sure if it works. So that's why we said, let's do and show what we know works, and so that's why we go, well, I guess if we push it right out to the front, maybe a foot back, now the left-hand corner is touching that magic green line. You can see that the truck diagrams work. This one actually works pretty well in this case, and as you can see, we can get all the important points, and we're pretty excited about that, except that we realized we're asking for more than we ever anticipated to in terms of the setback. And so, what we ended up with is, and this is essentially what you saw in your packets from last time, is, well, we're talking about 50%. Obviously the building on the left is 25%, the building on the right is maybe 60%. This is what might be needed to do to make this work. And it addresses our access, keeps pedestrian access safe, et cetera. Our businesses can do their business. Emergency vehicles can come down and maneuver pretty easily. We used a garbage truck to show those turns, which is probably about the biggest truck that we get down there. There will be no more semis that get pulled down there, only box trucks and then the pickup trucks. So we said, well, I guess we should take this to council because this is really what we need, or to the planning commission, and that's kind of how it evolved to this point. It's been a long process, and it's been a very thoughtful one, and each one of those concerns, we did address and wanted to make sure that we were at least being forthright and there was a process. So 2 quick things, and we can go to questions. You wanted to see, the view, and I showed this last time. This is essentially the view from, we'll call it the courtyard. This is what the fisherman's daughter would look like when you come down the stairs. The thing on the right is that main pedestrian corridor that gets you out to the lake, and Yortis, et cetera, et cetera. The building is white at this point, which of course reflects the early forest buildings, Forestry Service buildings. Has some other little elements on there too. And we also did one better for you from the lake. And so you can see that in terms of scale, in terms of materiality, in terms of it being essentially a humble kind of working type building, it was something that was important from the school and from the design teams to kind of respect that, that kind of humble, seaside, if you will, working architecture that these buildings always represented, from the Forest Service to the fishermen that work down here. So it's been you can even see back up through that circulation. This is where a lot of people would go. You can see up to 61 right back up there through the step that is essentially there now. There's a kind of a permanent temporary one there now to get you back up, onto 61.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a breathless walk to the sausage making. If it went too fast, I'd love to answer questions best I can.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, commissioners, I was thinking maybe, would you like to ask questions first?
I'd like to hear from anybody that wants to.
Okay,
have public
all right, fair enough.
Yeah.
So anybody who would like to speak, you'll have to come up to the microphone and say who you are and have a seat. And if you could be, seems like we have a lot of people, I don't know how many people are talking, but if you can be brief. Do you want to speak?
It's just a really quick question.
Okay,
My voice.
we can take questions too.
Presuming you do not get a variance, what are your thoughts?
Jerry, what's your
Oh.
name?
Oh, Jerry Cole, sorry, KOHL. Presuming you do not get a variance, what are your thoughts?
And maybe we could have one of you guys come up here to Mike's microphone. Oh, okay.
So great question. Before we purchased the property, we approached the city and we said, we're thinking about buying this piece of property. It has value to us if it allows us and enables us to evolve our campus. What are the norms for this neighborhood? And they said, well, you can look at other buildings that are sited here on the harbor there is historic precedent for building extending partially into the 40-foot zone. You'd have to ask for a variance request. It's reasonable that you would get some. And so that's what we were told, and so we move forward on those assumptions. We haven't, and all of our designs assume that that something in alignment with other buildings in that neighborhood is an acceptable request for us from and again, what we've presented in this request is the one that works best, we think, for ourselves as well as all the neighboring businesses. We understand the community consideration of that is what this process is about, for sure.
Okay. Great. Next person.
Name is Eric Brisson, one of the owners of North Superior Fishery. Just out of curiosity, just for us, we have 5 of us that work with our business. So parking wise, that'd be a question, I guess, for, we travel for fishing, and how would parking work out for us, I guess?
Yeah.
Stay in Mike's chair.
Greg, you can stay there, yeah.
Great.
That'd be great.
It's a nice chair.
Thank you. He gets the
Great
best.
question. And so a couple thoughts. Let me just address parking. North House certainly understands there is a need for parking adjacent to our campus. We didn't aspire to address that here. That is a topic that we're engaging, so I just want to confirm that. We've built a service drive with Angry Trout because we know vehicles need to come down below, and including fishermen who need to load fish and get down to their boats. Is all the parking that's behind dockside now going to continue to be there forever? I think we've said no. But our assumption is service vehicles like pickup trucks coming down to load fish, folks delivering vegetables, etc. But the hope is to have a parking lot very close to, maybe just right across from on 61. So boom, it's a jump across. Or you can pull up, park, jump across, and head out to the lake. We want to find something easy for you. That is one of our goals, is to have commercial fishing on our campus forever. That is part of what we want to do.
And I would just add that I'm Mike Crom I'm the chair of the North House Board, that the fishing and that portion of it has been a bullet point in all 75 meetings I think that I've been at dealing with this, that we want to maintain dockside, we want to maintain Angry Trout so that they can be a year-round place, and that we do not want to be a deterrent in that we want the fishing that's important to the culture of North House. And so it's been in the forefront all the way along. So.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead.
The variances that were approved.
Could you state your name and?
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Maria Erickson.
Okay.
The variances that were approved before, were they approved because there was a structure there before that was, they're fulfilling that same variance? Or did they ask for, like when Shelley, maybe you know this, Barb?
Our building, we expanded it. We expanded into a space that hadn't been, if you look at these pictures, there were fish houses and things out there, but our building expanded. We didn't just stay on the same footprint.
Right, yeah, I know the Angry
your
Trout
question?
didn't, but like Harley and
Yeah,
Shelley's
the building right
next to it.
They needed a variance.
Yeah.
It was a boat barn.
Right, but
We
did
put
it,
into the- There
you
wasn't
still
any-
need a variance if,
Where it was before.
okay, so they moved it way ahead.
Yeah, I would say they built away from the lake, they didn't build any closer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they moved back from
Oh, is that right?
where
I'm not
theirs
sure
was?
That's true, because
I'm pretty sure it's.
yeah, we'd have to look that up, but yeah.
I mean, just looking at the, historically, why have those variances been granted? Because the current line, of where the buildings are, some of them do, yes, already infringe upon that 40-foot setback.
Right.
but- So that's just something
That-
else to think about.
Yeah, that is part of the troubling bit of it all. Anybody else? Barb?
Hi, I'm Barb Levine, co-owner of the Angry Trout, and One thing I keep thinking about, like even you look around at some of these pictures, this harbor has been full of commercial activity. I mean, if you look at the harbor, it's not like you're going to be setting a huge precedent here. There isn't any other land that's going to be developed on the harbor. You know, this is, North House is it. We can't do anything more. The tourist park is what it is. There used to be a standard station on the harbor. It's not there anymore, thank goodness, in my opinion. But, and I think North House, you know, they have grown in response to what they needed all this time. I think they know what they need. They started out so small, and they've added what's worked, and it's not like they're, I don't feel like it's an overblown thing that they're trying to accomplish. And from a point of view for our business too, we do need to maintain that area behind, for deliveries and you know, it's the only commercial zone on the harbor. It's a little, and it's always been historically a commercial zone, and I don't see why, you know, a few feet into this area, it makes that big of a difference. And I also feel like North House, along the whole, this way, has really encouraged the community, the public, tourists, everybody, and we're trying to do that too in that neighborhood, to get people to access to the lake. Right now, I don't know if you've walked down there, it's a little gnarly. And I feel like, you know, what they're gonna do is gonna help that kind of waterfront. You know, I read the master plan. Part of the master planning process was to get a walkway all the way around the harbor. I think, you know, even with the building as close as they've proposed, you know, the drawings I've seen, they certainly want to maintain that access. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
All right, thanks,
and thank you for being on the planning commission. They could use another member. So
Yeah.
I don't live in the I don't live in the city. So, I mean, I know it sounds sycophantic, but thank you for your work.
So any of you who live in the city, you want to be up here.
You could vote.
That's right. Yes, again.
Yeah, Jerry Cole again. You mentioned the fish house, moving it. What are the thoughts about where it would move? Yep. Ooh, Mario.
All right.
Maria Erickson again, here talking as the president of the Cook County Historical Society. The North House has requested or offered the Historical Society, they want to be rid of Scots Fish House and have it be moved. And the Historical Society said, yes, we don't want it destroyed, we would like to save it. With, you know, depending on the timeline and financing and those sorts of things, which we're a much smaller organization, but North House said they would help with that item. So we have a request into the Forest Service to put it on the other side of the Coast Guard station in the parking lot.
Okay.
As there used to be fish houses there, you know, of course our personal preference is that it stay where it is for the historical integrity. But if that's not the case, then that's kind of the next best place. If it can't go there, you know, if the Forest Service turns that down, we have no other place. Yeah, they own the parking lot right behind the Coast Guard station and all of Artist Point. The Coast Guard, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, the Coast Guard station owns that strip across. And there is no...
That's going to be sold eventually, right?
Well, it'll go back to the city. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I hope so.
It'll go back to the city, and then the city will have a public comment period, and the Historical Society would love to have the Coast Guard station as well and have a whole maritime thing going on out there. That's in the long-range planning wish list.
Would that fish house, if you moved it there, would these big storms, would that be in the way of these big storms and it could get damage
Well,
that you're thinking about?
there's always that possibility. It seems that the parking lot, it seems that the parking lot is pretty sturdy. We were talking about putting a dock and putting it out on a dock, but after the fall storm, we were like, no, we're not gonna build a dock.
Maybe not.
So, and also the Niji and the replica fish house down in the rec park, those in the next 20 years need to be moved because they don't fit in with the rec park's master plan. And so we would move those over to the Coast Guard Station parking lot. Of course, this is all contingent on the Forest Service agreeing to do it and getting easement, because there technically is no easement to Artist Point. The Coast Guard Station owns all of a strip across, so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
I had another question.
Sure. Would you come up to the microphone, please? Thank you.
They're gonna state my name again. Another question. So on your diagram that you had of this new building getting closer to the water, there would be it's Tommy Eccles Senior's fish house. The little fish house that's really close to the lake right now. We use that, so just as in your pictures, it looks like it's gonna go away. Any idea where it might go, or would it stay, and how feasible would it be for us to work with you to keep using it? Yes.
Matt Nessheim, Facility Director at North House. Eric, we would work with you guys because we want to make sure that you guys have enough space. So probably it means a new building for you, maybe out on the dock like we talked about, or some other version like that.
Who would pay for it?
I don't want to answer that on the record, but North House would certainly be invested in it.
Oh, okay.
So the little gray building goes away, but there's an answer. Because we know you guys need nets, right? The whole community knows you need nets.
I have a question. Joyce Hayscree, I've lived in Grand Marais my whole life, and I really hope that the Jack Scott Fish House, that it really does get to go in a good place.
Okay.
It is our heritage in Grand Marais. It's been on the beach. I used to go with my father when he'd get his power saws, fixed. And it means a lot to me, and the beach means a lot to me. It seems to me that you're getting pretty crowded down here, and that is one big building that you're putting up. And I'm wondering, when you bought Bruce Lang's property up the hill here, which you've got parking, why couldn't you use that property? I mean, I might have missed something here when I first came in, but why couldn't that building go up there? That's a nice big piece of property. You could put parking below. I don't know who I'm asking.
Yeah, not me.
Don't ask us.
Pardon? And when Shelley and Harley sold, the property, were there any restrictions when they sold the property with regard to, say, that little fish house that they're talking about and the Jack Scott? I mean, was there anything
Yeah,
there?
I really couldn't answer that, but
So
Greg may
the
have
simple
an
answer is, the way all structures work, including a structure that's on the historic registry, if a person owns it, they're in charge of it and they get to make decisions about it. And that's true of the gray building, which isn't on the historic registry, but that is how it works. So, and to confirm, we really appreciate the partnership with the Historical Society. We're not trying to, one way to describe it is we're trying to get rid of the fish house. Those aren't the words I'd use. I hope you'd appreciate that. I would say we're trying to make sure the historic fish house has a future and in a place where the world can fall in love with it. Because I think it's lost down on our campus. So that's me being rationalizing, I know. But so so your question was about the little gray building. There are no requirements, but for the Lang parcel, that's a really pretty recent phenomenon for North House. We bought the dockside property 5 years ago, and though it may not have been publicly visible, we started planning from the day we owned it, trying to figure out, well, what are we going to do? This is a huge investment. The community, our students, our instructors, our supporters are going to want us to be as smart as we possibly can. How do we go figure out what the right direction forward is? So we focused our energy there. We were lucky enough to work with Bruce Lang and purchase the property, a year ago. So that's such a recent phenomenon. The rest of the planning journey's already moved forward. So that said, why is the classroom by the lake the preferred outcome? Well, does anybody, whether they live in Grand Marais, whether they live in here because they grew up here or they came here, or if they're visiting, where does everybody want to be?
We want to be by the lake, and that leads me to another thing. That beach should be big enough for the public to be able to access it. And I'm not getting into another thing here, but I can hardly get to the beach now with all the tourism. It's just gotten to saturation point. And our beach should be for people that live here, and I pay taxes here, and I want to see beach. I'm very happy that Gene Erickson sold that property, because I use that little park a lot.
Yep.
But I just wish you'd really maybe think about that Bruce Lang property. Is this something that you want to do right away, that you've got these plans for this big building?
We believe that evolving our campus sooner rather than later is part of what we ideally should do, because students want to come. People want to be part of our work.
I'm not opposed to North House, don't
Sure.
get me wrong.
Well, and I'm not reading
but-
your comments that way at all. Thank you.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's just that I have some questions,
Sure,
and I have some
sure.
thoughts, and I just thought I'd voice them.
Yeah. So we are trying to understand how to use the Lang parcel. There's our belief is the best space for students to learn are in classrooms that are about 1,200 square feet, right down by the water, with big windows and lots of natural light. That on a campus that looks like a fishing village, because that's what this place is. That's what this community is, and that's what people fall in love with. And that's one of the things that really differentiates North House from pretty much every other school we went and visited, is that we are actually in a community, and they are all outside of a community and have no sense of connection to a place that people call home. And when people come to North House, they don't just fall in love with North House, they fall in love with Grand Marais. And and I'd like to believe that our campus being more welcoming and accessible certainly is good for visitors, but it's also good for community members. And yeah, both of us, all of us live together on the campus. And I agree.
I gotta tell you, I'm paying some pretty high taxes here in Grand Marais. And this is and I'm not opposed to North House, but no taxes are paid, and your lease payment is so minimal. How much longer is the lease, by the way, Mike? Is it like 12 years?
No.
7.
7?
Yeah,
That's
maybe
another
32
thing
is
to
more
think of.
accurate.
I mean, who knows
29.
what our city's gonna look like and what our nation's gonna look like back then.
29, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So
It's just a thought.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Anybody else? Okay.
My name's Gary Radloff. I don't like speaking in front of people. I'm just going to say that right now. Just a little of my history. I'm basically, you can call me a marina rat, whatever you want. 40 years down there in that marina. I remember going out fishing with my dad, which is no longer here, and seeing Dick Eckel, Tommy Eckel. Who else would be down there, Joyce? I mean, there was, yep, come in from fishing. Carl Mort, Leonard Goodell, Daryl Holte, chewing tobacco on the dock with their knees up. I go out now fishing every day by for business too. And now I drive by Eric, Tyler, all these guys. And I see those old guys and these guys here. And they are not gonna have a place to fish down there forever. There's just no way. Parking. I mean, that is a huge issue. Huge. campground, there's no place to park for the boaters. I hear community space, walking the beach. I mean, nothing is inviting down there when you walk down that beach. Nothing. I sit there at the picnic table and I watch people. They walk, unless they've been up here a lot, they walk, they get along the beach over by the beginning of the North House, they stop and they look. I mean, you're doing your timber framing, you're doing your stuff. It does not look like I should walk through there. They turn around, they walk back, and they go up the bridge. You used to be able to drive a pickup all the way through there. Now there's skids there, kayaks. It's just not community friendly. Build this building right on the water. You're going to have a deck there. So somebody's going to walk across that beach and come to that deck. That does not look community space. It looks like a business. And, you know, I could go on and on for hours. But I mean, the bottom line is it is a planning and zoning meeting. Setbacks. That's it, huge. You're asking for huge. And it's like, when is it outgrowing your space? It's just, I don't understand. You bought the property from Harley and Tofty, or Harley and Shelley. That's 0.64 acres, correct?
I don't know the exact amount,
Okay.
sorry.
And then your original property was 0.22 acres. The property you lease from the city is 0.83 acres. So basically, you're leasing half of your campus from the city.
That's probably true.
That is
yeah.
probably true. But it's like, you know, I hate to say it. I mean, people outgrow their space. People outgrow their homes. People outgrow their property. So, I mean, I would have to agree with Joyce on, you know, maybe it's time to look for other spaces. I mean, yeah, people want to be down there on the water, but I mean, it is zoned commercial, but I mean, some of this stuff would almost be more industrial. I mean, you got forklifts down there, you got guys beating with wooden mallets, you got blacksmithing going on right next to a campground, marina, houses. And then, you know, I will show up at the marina to go use my boat, and I'll have one other buddy down there, and there's no place to park. It's, everybody's parking down there. There used to be signs, marina parking only. Them all disappeared. I mean, Dave Turstig does a wonderful job down there trying to keep everybody happy, but it's, people outgrow their spaces. That's all there is to it. And I mean, I know some morning I'm gonna idle out of that marina and I'm not gonna see Tyler and Brisson at the end of the dock like I used to see Dick Echo, Tommy Echo, all those guys. They're gonna get pushed out of their space. I really think that's the way it's gonna happen.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Appreciate it.
Can I respond to that just quick?
Sure.
Sorry. Couple things. That property was for sale. Anybody could have bought it. They could have put up condos there. They could have put up, it's zone C1, it could be 3 stories, it could be, you know, so the fishermen for sure would have been gone then. I want the fishermen there too. I think North House has been very committed to
Yeah.
keeping the fishermen, which is great. And, you know, anybody else who bought it wouldn't have, why would they have, I mean, they might have, but North House is a concern that's committed to keeping the fishermen there. Someone else who had bought it and who might pay taxes would say, no, we're going to put up condos or, you know, something that's going to make more money there. And the fish house itself, too, I mean, God love them, but Harley and Shelley had that fish house there for how many years and have let it, I mean, it's moldered to the ground, and thank goodness North House is willing to try to save it. They're in another, you know, I don't know, it's in rough shape. If you've gone by and looked at it, it's in rough shape. And I think it's great that both the Historical Society and North House are working to save it. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you, Barb. Any other comments?
Hello, everyone. I'm Adriana Brisson, married to Eric back there. So a few things I just wanted to bring to your attention today is we have been great partners with North House, and we really appreciate our relationship with them and rely heavily on them and their space. As you all have noticed, we rent their docks. We have 3 slips there. We rent the basement of Dockside, and then we also rent the little tiny fish house that we use for warming and keeping up our gear in there. And so we have a lot of concerns because as you looked on those maps, our building's getting relocated, but on the map it doesn't show where our building's going. But now we're hearing that maybe it's going to go on a dock. But for a little peace of mind for us, gosh, it'd be nice to see our building on a map because we're just taking your word for it and hoping that you're going to follow through. And that's a scary thought as a small business owner. Another thing too, where the building is and that variance goes out, you'll notice that currently there is a small dip into the water. This is where a lot of times we will pull the boats into the water, take them out of the water to work on them. There's a boat slide there. North House has also used that for some of their small boats, but that'll go away. So not to say that that's our biggest problem, because now we have this great big boat launch that has been built that I'm sure we'll have to utilize.
If it ever gets done.
Yeah. So just some really big concerns for us is our fish house. It's something that's utilized every single day. Not having it would be rather detrimental to our business. Another concern we have is the distance between the new building and the boat barn. We have in the fall, which is the prime herring season, 30 to 40 boxes, 10-pound boxes of herring come out of that dock. And so in order to haul that much fish out of the lake, you have to use a forklift. And we are told that there is enough room to get that forklift through between the 2 buildings. But, you know, fishing's a messy deal. There's lots of guts, there's seagulls, and, you know, there's going to be this great big beautiful building, and we have to sneak around with this dirty old forklift with the smell of putrefating fish coming out and dripping all over your brand new concrete. And you know, I'm sure you're thinking, oh, we'll give it the aesthetics, like this. I can't even say the word, you know, but people are really going to get a show when they see this. But for us, it's a little bit of an inconvenience because we're trying to haul all this fish, be respectful of the space of North House. We also have to haul our own pickup trucks down there now because the company that purchases most of our fish in the fall has a semi-truck. The semi-truck isn't allowed to go down there anymore. So we either have to take the forklift, haul all the fish up to the top of Highway 61, which if you've seen it in October and November, is a very busy intersection, and you can only hope that the truck's going to be there at 5 a.m. so you can miss all of the vehicles coming through. So that's a big concern of ours in the fall especially. It's not quite such a big deal in the rest of the season when we're not using that company interlocking. So just our big concerns are how this project, this variance, is going to impact our business and what we do for our community. You know, commercial fishing has been in Cook County for generations, and it's something we really hope that we can continue to provide to this community. It's a passion of ours. And so it's just really important that we logistically can find a way to make their projects and the future of North House still coincide rather, coincide with our business and our endeavors. And, you know, as North House grows, we have this concern that, like others have said, like maybe we'll get pushed out. You know, we hope that doesn't happen, but, you know, we weren't on the maps. You can't help but have that kind of fear. And then lastly, what I would just also like to add is the Scots Fish House is a big historical marker in our county. And we, being commercial fishermen, and like my husband is generations of commercial fishermen. We have such an appreciation for that building. And I even wrote down how I wanted to phrase this to you just to get our point across. But we would just love to see that building be kept in its original spot, paid tribute to the fishermen that have come before us. That building is a constant reminder of what we do. We're commercial fishermen, and we hope that we can stay that way and keep fishing on Lake Superior and providing good herring to the community members of Grand Marais. And I'm sure the boys can answer any questions if you wonder about the functionality behind the job and how the variance is going to impact us, but I just had to throw it out there for you. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate your
Thanks.
time.
Thank you. Yep.
Well, the site is just as historic as the fish house.
Either way.
You know, it really is.
All right, any other public comments at this point? All right, then we'll call the public comment period to a close, and it's over to commissioners. Question?
You always make me go first.
I know, okay,
Somebody
fine,
else.
fine, but
Go
Anton,
ahead.
you go first.
All right, I'll go first.
Okay.
We'll go in order.
Okay, good.
It's only my second one, so I'm still figuring it out.
Oh, yeah.
Jump right in.
I guess first, I'm really happy that people showed up. That's huge. Like, I always want people to show up, and I wish people showed up to more of our stuff, because it's not really a super glamorous thing that we do, and it's like, but it's important for our community, and, you know, it's a chance to see Joyce, and, you know.
We missed you in December, Joyce.
Yeah.
There was no truth in taxation this year because of COVID, so
No.
we didn't get to catch up with Joyce, but. I mean, no, she knows. But no, really, it means a lot, because all we can go with is the information that we're given, and I think the impacts to the decisions that we have to make, because that's what our job is it's helpful to be informed by other people, right? So I got a lot of phone calls, I got several emails about this, and anyway, thanks for showing up, really.
Yep.
And to North House, I appreciate the information that you provided from last meeting and showing us the process, which is kind of what I was asking for from the last meeting, to understand how your process worked through. I think, yeah, I mean, I'm probably not gonna like go on to any other
Okay.
information than that, other than let everybody else kind of say their piece, I guess. But you know, I think to be frank, I think that I understand so many different arguments to the point of like, yeah, historically, like, well, you look at the line that you guys had drawn on your map of where the setback, and that's really what the issue tonight is, right? The base question that we have to answer is, are we gonna allow or pass this through onto the city council to be able to allow the impact that you've requested? And a lot of the comments that I got, I'd say maybe 15% of them were about the shoreline setback, right? I think you've proven that in working with the DNR and your willingness to want to work with the DNR, to work with rain capture systems, green roof, the stormwater. We all know after today's slushy snow and then rain, that driveway's gravel, and there's a bunch more class 5 in the harbor than there would have been yesterday, right? And we know that the pavers that you're planning on doing, it's gonna improve that, right? That, just without a doubt. But most of the comments that I got were about the fish house, which isn't really what we're answering, but they're tied together, because if this goes through, then there is that. I mean, there are dashed lines on here. I don't know if they're separated or if they're labeled wrong, but one to be removed, one to be relocated. But we know what the buildings are, right? And I think that if we're going to look at the historical context of where we're allowing buildings to be placed, it's disingenuous to not look at the historical context of the building that is currently sitting there right now. Not only to us as people here in this room, but also to the people that were fishing here long before any of us, even the folks that have been here fishing for whatever, 5 generations, right? I mean, like, that area and that family that's associated with that, it's important. And I think it's important to realize that you lose a lot of that historical context when that is out of place. So those are a lot of the feedbacks I got. Again, we're not making a decision on what you do with the Scott Fish House tonight, but we're looking at the variance setback and what that is. But they happen to be conjoined. So I can't not, I guess, maybe think of what the ramifications are. So that's my
Okay, thank
6
you.
cents.
Stacy?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this, and I want to start off by sharing, quite a few years ago in this room, there was a wise gentleman who encouraged the board to think 7 generations ahead. I found it kind of hard to think about at the time, but that's where I'm at today. I want to think about my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. And what do I want this harbor to look like for them? Now, I grew up here. My grandma was 7 years old, 7 years old when the Scott Fish House was built. So this part of the harbor is deep in my roots, even though we weren't commercial fishermen. But I know the area. It was a working harbor when I was growing up, when my parents were here. And so I get it's your property. You bought it. You get to do what you want. But that fish house is the last remnant we have of real fishing history in our community. And I think that's important. I'm grateful you want to work with the Historical Society to maybe get it someplace. We don't get to choose what you do with it. Well, nothing we vote on is going to matter in that respect. But I just feel like giving this 40-foot setback will really change the character of that area. And this is the last place on our harbor for a commercial zone of having something like the fishing. North House is great. North House is a great asset to our community. Our heritage, our history, I think, is more important. So, that's all I guess I have to say.
Okay. All right, Ben?
Yeah, like Anton, I got a lot of calls, as well, phone calls, text messages. Yeah, I'd say it's about accurate about people were very concerned about the fish houses, which I have to admit I wasn't as concerned about that because this is your property, right? And if it were my property, I would be like, okay, I think you've done everything you can do to try to save the fish house, and I think that's been established. So I feel okay about that. But I can't get over the setback. And I understand there's clearly precedent all over the map here. I can't speak to why somebody else allowed those encroachments. I don't know if they were moved closer to the lake or away from the lake, or if it was because it's a boathouse or because it's a fish house and it was made sense that it was closer to a dock. But we have a chance now and a responsibility now to look at the setback for what it is, which is an important protection for our greatest resource. So I haven't seen anything, if anything, in some of the drawings that you proposed, and maybe it was your design team, it looked like there were some other options to maybe just scale back the building a little bit, and you were almost there. So it didn't seem like it was impossible to just move the building north a little bit. So, but as it sits now, it's just not something I can support.
All right. Thank you, Ben. So, I'm coming back to to the things that we have to answer about the variance. And I have heard about the fish house as well. I mean, that seems pretty clear. There is a lot of concern around that. Again, that's not specifically, but it is tied to what we're talking about here today. Is it in harmony with it? And I would say, yeah, it is. And I'd say it definitely hits the comprehensive plan. Does seem reasonable. We have other businesses there that have been using, been inside of that setback. And even the last one, it's the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality, and it won't. The only one that gets tricky, and I brought this up last time as well, is that, the plight of the landowner. It's circumstances unique to the property and not created by the landowner. And that gets hard. It gets very hard in this situation. Because I see it. I mean, I see why you need it. And, you guys talked about it very clearly, about the need and the desire to have that classroom. But as the other commissioners here have pointed out, that line is getting broken pretty hard with the design that we have before us right now. So I'm not sure that I'm in a place to fully support it at this point. But I would also like to throw it back to the counselors to have anybody have any last comments before we bring this up for a vote. Oh, would you like
Can
to
I
make
ask a question? Is that-
You,
is that allowed?
absolutely, yeah, that's part of it.
Sure. And I do want to underscore, while our drawings have worked hard to show, how garbage trucks can turn around, I'm sure that excites everybody, garbage trucks turning around. But, it's curious what things you try to figure out when you're trying to run a business. Just a reminder, the dilemma that we face in terms of space on the property isn't of our own making, exclusively because of the size of the building. Let's remember, a year ago today, semi-trucks were pulling around behind the dockside fish market. Box trucks, pickup trucks, no problem. Why do we have the issue? It's because MnDOT and the city asked or said, this driveway goes away. So this is a hardship. This is a reality we've accepted. No semis. But it seems reasonable. There are certain vehicles that need to access that space in the name of running a good business and being a good neighbor to our other businesses. So, help me understand. For instance, I'm curious about people's reaction to the line that Bruce showed.
Yeah, and really, getting to that, I mean, that, for me at least, that was the most compelling argument, is that we've already seen how this area has been used. And so you're thinking you could do that when you purchase a property was not unreasonable.
Yep.
And I see that, and I understand that. And we have granted other variances to the trout and other places to expand and whatever. But it is just hard right now, because I feel like, it's the last space on there. And I get that it makes sense to have the classroom there. But I don't know. It's a tough question, because I can see why you want to have it there. I can see why you wanted to have it there. I feel like the feedback we're getting and the concerns about the Harper are legitimate. We also have a line that says, hey, this is the setback. And we're saying like, oh, well, we've said screw it all along, so we'll just continue to say that. And maybe that is a more fair way to go. But, yeah.
I probably wouldn't characterize it that way either.
Oh, sorry. No, I certainly had very good and reasoned ways how we got there, because we would have gone through this, well, maybe not depending where those variances were
Another
granted.
way to frame it would be to say, this is a working section of the harbor where there's a history of working buildings being closer to the water, not farther away.
Right.
And what we work on in this community has evolved over time, as it has in every community. And so, just to refer to the line I'm referring to, there is the 40-foot setback line. Bruce showed you a green line, and remember it changed colors. So what's reasonable? Nothing? Is that what's reasonable?
Can you pull that slide back up?
Yeah. And that's kind of what, in response to your comments, Ben, I was curious about too, is there seemed to be some line that you would be willing to support. I think if you have something like that, it's fair to offer that feedback.
Well, I don't know what that is, because I don't know what that looks like in relation to the line, right? Because I don't think all options have been exhausted, because none of those pictures adjusted square footage whatsoever, right? And maybe you can, maybe if 2,500 is the number or whatever it is, that's the number.
Yeah.
But I don't know, everybody else has to work around the parameters of their setbacks, when you're gonna do a garage, or you're gonna do a house, or we've got other people in town wanting to do auxiliary structures that they're having a hard time fitting them on their property lines.
Well, and then they ask for variance.
They do, but there's generally some sort of, maybe not always, but I think that there's some, isn't there usually some sort of give and take on that? Right? It isn't just it isn't like, oh yeah, I want a 40 by 60 pole barn on my back. Oh, I can't build that big. Okay, well, I'm going to do a 30 by 40, and I'm still going to need to get 5 feet off the sideline instead of 15 feet or a no sideline setback. I think right? I don't know.
I don't think that's how it generally happens.
It isn't?
I don't think that a lot of requests get to you that you're clearly going to say no to. Right? People just don't ask for that sort of thing.
Right.
So it's pretty rare that there's give and take. Usually when somebody comes and asks for a variance, the planning commission does think it's reasonable. So this is a different type of circumstance. And while you're looking for that, I just want to say that, Michael, the number 4, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property not created by the landowner, is always the hardest one. You want to build a building, that's the problem. You created it. You didn't have to want to build a building, right? You didn't have to want to grow. It's always the plight of the landowner that's created by their own desires or actions. I don't know how we ever get around it, except in this case, I think there actually is a decent way around it, because North House is doing things that they don't have to do, and some folks have talked about that in this meeting, but I think it's important to reiterate it, that some of the circumstances unique to the property are the fact that they're trying to keep the fishermen there, and that they're trying to keep the restaurant there.
Yeah.
And when they show those 4 green dots, there's only one of them that's them. They're in the business of running this school, but they're trying to accommodate these other businesses. They certainly don't have to.
Yeah.
Their board has been pretty clear that they want to, which is, I think, to the community's benefit. And when we hear from the community, that's the sort of things they're telling us to try and preserve the heritage, preserve the actual fishing, not just the history of it, but it's happening right now. Preserve the restaurant. We certainly heard that quite a bit. Are we going to force them to make those choices, is what I'm concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the questions that maybe I have, is that the idea of if we go back to Greg's, and it's almost like a deeper part of the conversation, but you're kind of into that, Mike, I guess, in some ways with what you just said. If you look at where the numbers are showing, right, in the graph that Greg showed, the bar graph, right, that shows this, it's not exponential growth, but it's pretty impressive growth, right? The success of the North House, I don't think anybody can, dismiss that, right? And so maybe what the answer is, again, preserving history, I don't know how you can really say you're preserving history when in the same breath you're most of us knew Tommy Eckel, but so that's not that far old of history, right? You know what I mean? But at what point is even that one, right? I don't know. There's this disconnect of well, we can get rid of that one because it's from the 50s, but we can't get rid of this other one because it's got a much deeper history, which I think I don't feel comfortable making that judgment call. And again, one of the questions I had asked Greg was like, okay, so this does happen, and you do this, and you have 2 classrooms. Well, the graphs that you showed would prove that you're going to outdo this, right? And so if what the concern seemed to be is the setback, and it seems to be the history, not just the building, if whatever the workaround on that would be, but really that connection to the historic building to the site, like what, like, is there a spot, is there some compromise in, like, yeah, sure, let's keep it behind that green line, like, absolutely, you'll get a variance, you're gonna stay in that green line, but you're also gonna change the footprint, so maybe you're not gonna get, you know, I mean, I think you said that, like, with the vestibule area, it's like 60 by 70, that's 4,200 square feet.
It's 3,600, just the footprint.
Okay.
42 by 72, something like that.
Yeah, but that includes the vestibule?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's basically 42 feet wide, and it's like a 10 foot, but it's not the entire length of that 7 feet.
Okay. So I guess my point is in trying to not just say like, you don't get the variance request and tough, you know, this has to stay, is like, what is this idea of looking at what your guys's, and I can't speak to what the like long-term plan is of the North House and like what that's, where that goes, but even if you built if we approve this, the Scott Fish House gets moved, the Eckel Fish House gets torn down, you guys build 2 classrooms, like that, then it's not like, okay, well, now we've got enough, right? Like now we're good, and you know, we don't expect our class sizes to grow or our offerings to grow or the people that we bring in. Like, I think you want to continue to like share the message that you guys, right, founded that whole thing on, which is like this continuation and growth. And so is there a way, is there a solution? And it's probably not something that we can do, but where you can fit within those constraints, you can still serve the adjacent property owners or the folks that are renting from you that you say are vital to the character of North House. You could potentially even keep the historical building on site in its place. And what if you ended up with a class round, big classroom? Maybe it was bigger. Maybe of the 2 sizes you had, maybe you can reconfigure that, right? I mean, that would actually fall almost directly in line with either the red or the blue building as far as like fitting in with the area. You wouldn't really need to ask for too much of a variance request, certainly not beyond the green line. And it isn't, I mean, that's the thing, it isn't exactly what you want, but 1 classroom, even if it's a larger classroom, isn't probably gonna like satiate the needs of what the North House needs to like continue their programmatic growth, right? But I'm not sure 2 is going to do that, right? And that's not like our place necessarily to say that, but is there like a way, right? Like, you know, Ben brought up, like, this, all the footprints are the same in this, right? Like, yeah, you move stuff around and you moved it up and down and side to side and rotated it, but you didn't change the footprint, like that. And I understand where you came from it, right? That first slide you showed said, okay, we need 2 classrooms, like you have to start with the plan with something. But I don't know, I mean, that's the only thing I can maybe throw out there, is that, is there something else that you can do? Like, if you know that you guys are gonna continue to succeed and grow and like draw more and more people, like, yeah, I don't know. Is there a higher value to like really honoring the history and like being the place, and with doing something a little bit different and a little bit smaller? That first slide that I don't know how big that building was on that colorful, kind of cool overhead, looked like a sketch drawing that you did, right? I mean, that sure didn't look like, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm maybe talking in circles at this point, but I guess I'm just trying to think through that, like, all the different points that are brought up, but it's like, yeah.
So from a, you know, I look at these as practical problems that need to be solved. So is the zoning committee saying that it has to be completely behind the red line? Or what? I mean, that's really what I hear lots of talking around things. Are you saying that you will not let anything go in front of the red line. I mean, because you have to give us something to work on. That's what you're saying. And then if we do that, remember, even if it's the red size building, you're not getting a garbage truck down there. And that means the other businesses are gonna have a hard time with that. Particularly Fisherman's Daughter and Angry Truck will not have. I mean, so I just, it's a practical thing that I just need to know what you're saying, so then we know how to respond to it.
Right.
Well, when I asked Ben, here's what I heard, and maybe from what other people have said, here's what I've heard, and you can confirm or modify or whatever. There's got to be a give and take, and there hasn't been any give. So there won't be any clear feedback about what the line can be until there is an actual modification or a willingness to change what you're asking for. They can't give you a clear answer.
I have a question, if
No.
possible.
Hold on.
Modify?
Yeah, so, yeah, I do think that, you know, I get that you got to your size that you wanted. That works for you, but I think that what we're hearing is that we would need something adjusted on that. That'll make it work. You know, it doesn't have to be, I mean, in my opinion, just my opinion, it doesn't have to be completely outside of that red line. But, you know, you've gotten a lot of feedback here today. And I feel like, yeah, and I understand maybe that size is the size. And maybe you don't have any option to go smaller. But I think, you know, some compromise is warranted in this case.
Can we hear from the other planning commissioners too? So, I mean, I just need to understand a little bit where it's coming from, so, because I mean, obviously we make a huge effort, and you go, it's still not what we want. And that's why I'm like, I just want to
Gotcha.
I need some more,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah.
rubber on the road, so then we can go, okay, let's solve this problem, or we can't solve the problem, whatever, but it would help me, help them come up with ideas, so if I could throw other planning
Yeah, yeah.
commissions, that would help.
Stace, do you have anything on that one? Come on.
Yeah, I have a problem that we don't have any setback, that we are going to a 0 setback. What's the right number? I don't know. I get your garbage issues and your delivery issues, but you're not the only business that was screwed over by MnDOT and the city on that road construction. Talk to Java. Talk to SOB. What are they doing? Maybe you should have joined us in fighting it a little more. Yeah, I get it's caused problems. Perfect example. But there's got to be there's got to be more than one way. I'm sorry, I don't see putting that size building on this lot with a 0 setback.
Just what, again, I understand the 0 setback mean like in front, like where it's shown right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this
Yeah,
is
like that,
going
okay.
all the way down here.
Yeah, with
So
you're talking
so
about
that's
with the deck,
deck.
Stacy?
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
that's what the deck you're saying too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the building.
That's part of,
Right.
I mean,
it's part of,
part of the built structure
We wouldn't require a land use permit for it.
for the deck.
I mean, if somebody wants to put riprap on the beach and put a poured slab patio on there, they don't have to ask us for permission. They'd have to ask the DNR for permission probably, but they don't have to ask us.
Okay.
We don't regulate it.
Well, that's
Yeah.
helpful to know.
Yeah, it's helpful.
Yeah, so just to understand.
Okay.
the deck, obviously,
So-
in your mind is
It's outside of what we
and it
can-
says
yeah.
0
But, so
setback.
we're not speaking to that.
Okay, all right.
So we're just speaking to our.
Well, you
built-
can still speak to it, you know?
Yeah,
The
I
thing
mean,
about
well-
a variance request is all of these issues get to be relevant because they are, right? And if the deck creates a situation where people are telling you, I actually don't feel welcome there, you can take that into consideration. It's absolutely relevant.
Okay, so the 0 setback is problematic, but you don't necessarily know what the right answer is. So to a certain extent, we have to kind of guess at that in terms of coming back.
yeah, and I get that previous boards have issued variances
Yeah.
for those buildings. I wasn't on that board at that time. I didn't get to ask my questions. And I guess I go back to Well, somebody thought 40 feet was an important number to put into our ordinance, or the Lake Superior, whatever you call that plan. And I guess I kind of want to honor that to a certain extent.
So
Seems like-
to a certain extent, I'm sorry, just so I understand.
I'm sorry,
No.
I can't give you a number. I'm not there yet.
Okay.
Well, but one thing I do want us to all remember is that, again, like the line that we were showed originally, and given when they purchased the property and the thoughts that they had around that, not unreasonable. So I think we are looking for a compromise. We are looking at like, okay, what you wanted was not unreasonable, but now you're getting the feedback of the community and of the commissioners here
Right.
that we need something else. And you might want to have a firm number from us, but, or,
Yeah, no, I'm not saying a firm number, just
Well-
a general idea, because if you go, no, it's never gonna happen unless. it's
okay, yes.
completed."
Let's say, let's say
That's-
this. We can say this, that it is not a no forever. It's saying like, we have to keep doing this, and we have to come to a better compromise. And I think, you know, one of the, again, you want to keep the size, I think, and I'm just taking what I've heard, you know, I'm thinking you want to keep the size, you got to move it. You have to move it to where it's uncomfortable for you, for the truck traffic and whatever. And, you know, that, because I think what we're hearing is that the real, or one of the biggest concerns is that setback from the water. And obviously, those buildings really matter to a lot of people, and that I think, I mean, that's outside of us, but it's clearly feedback you're getting and is important, you know, as city councilors and as commissioners here, you know, that's important to us too. So,
Have you guys walked that property down there?
Maybe
Yeah.
once.
I mean, the lines kind of look a certain way, and
Yeah.
actually being there is a different.
no, for
they
sure,
just-
Barb. Yeah, no, for sure. And that's why it's a quandary, because
Yeah.
I'm like, it totally makes sense. Like, yes, of course you should be able to do this. But then you look at what we've written and what we've said, and we said there is supposed to be a setback, but we see like, well, like your building and then the other buildings are all in there, and, but here we are in this moment, and it's not as clear.
And I don't think the setback is about the setback from the lake per se in this case. I think other people, I mean, we've heard what the issues are from the folks that are here.
Mhm.
And the distance from the lake is really just a symptom of, it's really about the other things. It's about the space being used, and it's about the space changing and the fish house being there or not being there, or the ability of the folks that are using it for business purposes to continue to do that. So what, the number, there's nothing magic about it, right? It
Right.
it was created by who knows when, where, and it's applied uniformly throughout town except not. And in this case, all of these variances, plus a few variances over on the East Bay side from the shoreline setback, the way that we've thought about the setback is, it's as much about protecting the structure from the lake as it is about protecting the lake from our development, maybe more so, right? The idea that it's 40 feet from the vegetation line is trying to say the vegetation line is established based on what the lake does, right? And if you get too close to it, it's going to do something to you. And so when do we consider setbacks from that to be, you know, the 40 foot's not as important? When there's a break wall helping protect, first of all, and there's two in this case. Like the fact that there's that inner break wall there has been a finding in every one of those shoreline setbacks that was important, because then it's not as risky, no risk, right? But not as risky to those structures from the lake. And the same thing on the East Bay side is, okay, there's a difference in the conversation about when Sydney's asked for a shoreline setback and when the folks that built a house right next to them asked for a shoreline setback. The difference is there's a break wall in between the lake and that house, and there's not one in between the lake and Sydney. And I think that is how these conversations about lakeshore setback have occurred, when we're just thinking about the number and the setback. So obviously that's not all we're thinking about here. And you get to include all the issues that really are relevant to the findings that you have to make. But I wouldn't hold on to that 40-foot number with anything. It's not magic.
Okay. So Stacy, that goes to one of your points, and how does that strike you? Like if they are, I mean, let's say, making their own argument, but let's just say they take care of those buildings in some manner that's suitable. Is the setback, with the information that we now have, is that hard and fast for you? Or is that something you feel like you could move on? You get what?
I think I said,
Mhm.
I'm not against variances.
Yeah.
I just have a problem with a 40-foot variance. We've done variances before. I voted for variances
Oh,
before.
yeah, right.
We've just never said, okay, no setback. And I guess that's what I'm struggling with.
Okay.
What is the right number? I get it's your land. You get to do what you want. This is the libertarian in me, like, ooh, trying to balance, you know.
Right. But with knowing what Mike was just pointing out about how, we've got those two breakwaters there, does that impact your thinking on it at all?
Not tonight. It doesn't change my mind.
All right.
Not tonight.
Very good. Anton, anything more?
No, I don't know if I have anything else. I mean,
Okay.
I don't.
All right. Well.
Can I just say one last thing?
Yes, good.
So I just want to, again, say thank you to people for engaging this really important conversation. I was encouraged, we were encouraged to come, present what we thought was going to be highly workable for North House because, and also for the neighborhood. And so we did that. And we understand, part of the process is feedback. So this is good. So thank you for that. It's hard work too. So thank you for that too. I will, like Bruce, underscore, it's hard to walk into a vacuum. Some information in some way coming back at North House that helps us think about how do we show up again to have a conversation that will move the ball forward. How do we get there? Because showing up to do this again and then again and then again isn't going to be anybody's idea of fun, right? So I don't know in what way the process can feed information back to us, whether we can come back for a work session, and I suppose we're not supposed to do that, right, Mike?
No.
But as an example, Bruce had a drawing up there, and it was all behind the green line, not all behind the red line.
Right.
But effectively, it was halfway from where we proposed to the building totally being outside of the red building.
Right.
So, for instance, if we knew, the south wall can't go any further than that, Buster Brown, well, then we've got to decide on the give and take, right? We've got to decide, are we going to make sacrifices with garbage? Are we going to make room for the... But in the absence of a line like that, I'm just confirming it's really hard for us to go do our work that this community's asking us to do, and I'm glad you are. So... But some kind, again, I don't know how that process works, but just to confirm, that's the thing we need, if we're going to come back and engage in a productive dialogue.
But I think for you guys as well, not just the things that we've said, but like the things that you've heard from other people here, and like if it's going to be successful, not only in the eyes of North House, but in the eyes of the community. Right, then, I think that part of that, I think that, 40 feet, right, that's extreme, that's what we've acknowledged. The exact number is less of an issue as maybe trying something different in what the approach is to the, what can happen there, like make sure that those guys can keep fishing. And, they probably would, if you guys work around and you guys talk with the board and you're like, okay, let's get this figured out where they're going to have their new, gear gear shed or whatever it is, right? Like, let's get that stuff in there, because what I would, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's what I started with. I'm really glad that people showed up, right? It's easier, like, and I talked to you about this too, Greg, like the idea of like the worst time to like react is after we've made a decision, right? Like, it's hard for us to like, oh man, I wish I would've known that. I didn't know any of that information. I didn't really think, I didn't think that little building up front even got used for anything, right? I was concerned about the Scott Fish House, but the Eckel Fish House, I didn't know anything. But it's like,
Can you move the building back to where the Eckel Fish House is and leave the fish house?
That's an interesting thing to explore, if that's a big interest to folks.
I don't know, it seems to be a kind of a, I don't know, some sort of a,
Well, we talked at one point, you'd love to be able to going out on back, it's like thought.
It was a thought, I mean, because we use that little building, so, I mean, we're kind of at your guys' mercy, you know? Just because we don't want to be pushed out, you know, and we want to stay there.
Yeah.
You know, because it's a good historical thing, but.
Everyone's in agreement with that, it's just with the Commissioner, I'm so informal, it's like Commissioner, yeah. It's relaxing, so, I mean, is it that existing building, or just making sure you have them? It's just, you know, that's something that we can.
Yeah.
I'm a historical kind of guy. I mean, it's been in my family forever, fishing has, and I think to keep something, I mean, if you're gonna take away the Scott Fish House, like, it's your guys' property, you're gonna do what you wanna do. But to at least, if they can give and take, you know, with you guys, and leave at least something that leaves a little bit of history on the shoreline, you know, I mean, we'll do our part to help out, you know, if there's problems with the building, you know, we've helped put a new tin roof on it, because it was starting to leak, you know, and we've done all that, but.
What if you got a bigger?
Well.
I've also thrown at you guys too, like, if you do this bigger building, why wouldn't you make a section of it big enough with windows, like, for showing how we clean fish? You know, I've thrown that option out there, and I kind of felt like I got laughed at, you know? So, I don't know. I mean.
So, okay, so just
Wait.
again, sort of information, the idea of making sure you have a facility, maybe it's to make it better for everybody, is something of interest. Not, but maybe saving that building is more important, so at least we have two things to consider.
Yeah.
Because then we can say, well, what about this, what about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I would
And does
also
it-
just add making sure that there's space to be able to haul fish off
Mhm.
efficiently without interrupting classes or causing too much
Right.
Yeah.
motion, just because it's such a tight area.
Yeah, right
Yeah.
now it's about 15 feet.
Yeah, and that would
We
be,
agree.
that would be perfect,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because we already have enough room.
Yeah, and 15 feet is what we have here. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so that
Yeah.
doesn't change.
Yeah. that's-
Yeah.
So I mean, can I just throw this out there? I know we're worried about like delivery trucks, garbage trucks. I mean, that's kind of a bigger proposal, I guess, as we're kind of getting into that whole garbage dumpster thing. But didn't you guys build a platform kind of at the top of the road for like the used grease for the grease trucks to come? I mean,
I
is
don't know
there a
about that.
possibility to maybe move a dumpster up there? Then you don't have to worry about so much turning radius?
Well, we talked about that,
I mean, that's an option.
backing out and doing all the stuff you have to do on the 61 is not
Yeah.
workable, that's the problem.
But I mean, if the garbage company could come earlier, you know, I mean,
We've talked to Barry a lot. We're trying to do what he'd prefer, you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, those are options too. I mean,
Okay.
I mean, you're gonna have that grease truck come and they're gonna pump grease, but how difficult is that gonna be for that company?
I don't know much about all that, those operations.
what's that?
There's the grease with it, for the angry truck, yeah.
And for the,
dockside.
yeah, and dockside, yep.
That's
Yep.
a semi.
Yep.
All right.
So-
Okay.
I mean, this is great neighborhood meeting.
Yeah.
I've got mixed feelings about it because I feel like
I'm throwing it out there.
this kind of conversation
It's
is what has
great.
to happen, and that this is the venue that's the
That
first one
seems to
that's been
be-
able to make it happen. I'm pleased to be a part of it.
And
Yeah.
On the other hand, I don't think we're gonna get it done tonight.
No.
Like, you all need to have more conversation.
So just
You mean shifting the building?
for my clarification on the process, we do need to vote, is my understanding.
You are running into the end of your 60 days that you're allotted to make a decision on this. You can request 60 more, you can take 60 more days to make this decision, but I don't think you need them. I think you've already made the decision. And I think that even if you want a modified proposal to come before you, that we need to go back to the public hearing stage with that. Because you're going to want to hear from folks again. And so my recommendation would be, if I'm hearing you correctly, that you recommend that you deny this variance. Give them whatever feedback you can, and I actually think they've gotten quite a bit of feedback already. And tell them you'll welcome a new application that tries to address some of the issues you've heard tonight.
Yeah. I think that is what it is. I think we are going to deny this variance, and
Do you need
I
a motion?
think,
Yeah,
yeah,
are you-
we will get it, but I just want to pre-bubble. Just, I do feel like we got a lot of good feedback. I think you guys heard from the community, from the people who are right there with you. I think, yeah, you got a lot of data to work with. I know it's kind of messy. You can definitely reach out, obviously, to any of us here on the commissioners, of the commissioners. But anyway, I'll bring this to a vote. The North House Shoreline Variance request is up. And
You need to make a motion to
I
deny
would-
the variance?
What's that?
Need to make a motion to deny the variance?
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Any seconds?
I'll second.
So in order to deny it, we also have the findings that you will need to make.
Right.
And in order to approve it, you have to make affirmative findings for all of them. In order to deny it, you at least have to explain yourselves, this is where they didn't meet the test.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that as I said before, I felt like you hit pretty much all of them, except for the one that had to do with the plight of the landowner. And I do feel like that still plays in here, in this case, for the denial.
I think you thought differently than everyone else about that, so I might make some recommendations for you.
Okay. Go for it, Mike.
What are the issues that were talked about tonight? It's the existing uses on the site, it's the Scott Fish House on the site, it's the amount of space that ends up being used on the site. And for me, those are about the changing the character of the locality more than any of the other ones.
I guess I didn't see it that way. But
I did.
I could just as easily.
I was
gonna
write a
let you know
finding
that
says
was
it
my
doesn't
opinion.
change
I
the
feel like the
character.
character is in line.
But
with
if you're
that.
concerned about those issues, that's where I think it fits.
Was my number one.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
But I agree, the plight of the landowner too, when
Yeah,
they knew the size of the parcel before they bought the parcel.
yes, but as I've said, they
Yes.
also had every indication that it might be a proper use. But anything more? We have a second, so all those in favor of denying?
Aye.
I,
And so this will still come before the city council next week. They have to make the final decision, and they don't have to accept the recommendation. They can change and decide something different if they feel different. Of course, two of them are here in the room, so.
I'd like you guys to come back. You know, I hope you, and I'm sure you will, but I'd like to see what you come back with, you know, and taking not just what we said, but what everybody said. And if there does end up being a public comment period, right? I mean, I think, yeah, I don't know. So thanks for the time, and, but, yeah, hopefully you didn't feel like it was a waste to come back this time.
All right. Thank you.
This really is
I know
fun. Somebody should
there's
join.
more stuff. There's more stuff. Don't you want to learn more about what we do here?
Talk about
Yeah,
commercial
it
industrial
really is a
zone,
fun
come on.
job.
Come on.
Tell them we're talking about housing.
Housing.
It's about housing. Everybody
Commercial
wants to know about
industrial.
Coming up, don't leave now.
It pays really good, too.
Yeah, really.
Amazing.
Per hour. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Barb.
Good job,
I know.
Talk soon, I'm sure.
It's basically Highway 61 corridor before you drop down the hill.
Yeah.
So basically, once you get to 8th, from 8th up. Yeah. And it is allowed as a conditional use, but that's how we live. Thanks, Greg.
Is this yours? Oh, gosh. Anybody want a new?
I'll definitely take it.
New old laptop.
Is that your charger?
cord is here.
Who's gonna go around? Crawl through. I think yours is down here.
Thanks for coming.
Yep.
Sounds good. See ya.
Right to the right through there.
Should have known this is gonna be a Cliff Bar kind of a meeting.
Cliff Bar.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg. See ya.
Yeah, good night.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have eaten something today.
Well, I did tell Jeff that either way this conversation went, it was gonna be nice to have him here. Because, you know,
I wonder
if
if
it was
Jeff feels-
heated, and then maybe we would need to have sort of a calming, let's talk about zoning for a minute.
Let's zone into zoning.
Just to chill
Is
everybody
Jeff
Yeah.
out.
gonna feel bad that everybody kind of got out of here when he
Yeah,
was about
nobody wants to
present?
hear him.
I'm
wants to
guessing
hear
that's
about
not his
housing?
first rodeo.
I thought housing was such a,
I know, that's the issue in our
Right?
community, right? And they
like
want
they
to
all
walk out,
is.
hit the
really?
road.
But how many people know the secret, right? That zoning is actually what housing is all about. Like,
Started
we
out.
actually have a whole lot of ability to change this,
Yeah.
and it's already started.
Did you catch,
Can
any
we
of,
change this section to say it's only fish houses?
did you catch any of the end of our last meeting at all? I don't know if you'll go back and watch it.
I usually try not
We
to.
had a really
Sorry,
good,
guys.
good conversation, I thought.
I called and
I had
asked
talked
him
to my
watch
staff
the
about it.
movie.
You didn't do it?
Really?
You didn't give us a thumbs up?
I did talk to my staff about it.
I thought we'd get some feedback on it, but maybe not.
I've got lots of feedback for you guys. But not tonight.
Oh, not tonight. Thank you.
Another special meeting.
I think we'll do this one outside of the meeting. Talk about some of those issues. The housing that's here, though, is, I mean, it's hard to follow what just happened. I wish we had crowds show up. We really did
Yes.
have folks join us when we did the work with Jeff the first time to try and put together all the changes we made to the zoning in the residential
Yeah.
areas. We had a lot of public involvement in that, which was nice because, as you've recognized, it helps a lot.
It does.
Yeah.
But now we're on our own, which is not a surprise when it comes to making changes to strange zoning rules. Trust me, by the time we get this in front of you in an ordinance fashion, if we can manage to, get the word out on Facebook, there will be people in the room, hopefully, to tell us what they think about it,
Yeah.
which would be nice.
One smartly laid WTIP story the day of the meeting can really bring the people up.
It took a team on this one, I'm pretty sure, to get folks here. And that you heard, here we just can't stop talking about it, right? That you heard from so many people about the fish house is telling.
Yeah.
Not only about that being an important issue, but about, who's organized and who can get people to meetings.
Right.
Yeah.
And I hope that they saw that seat and took you seriously.
I know, and there were
about
some
it.
good young people there.
Absolutely.
That's what we need.
Exactly.
I was trying to think how many of them
We
live in
should
town.
have.
Ben's only
Well, that-
26, I mean.
Does he live in the city? 20.
So,
Oh, yeah.
hey, with no further ado,
Here's
Yay,
Jeff.
Jeff.
Good to see you again.
Yeah.
I was in the area. I was in the area, so I said to Mike, "Well, I'll come up because my family was heading south." And
We talked about it first, and here he is.
yeah, so we'll dive in. Mike wasn't here, but you all were here, right? I think everybody's here. So we did the presentation 2 weeks ago, I guess. And just a reminder. The purpose of the study is to determine how new housing may occur on land currently in the CI zoning district. It's not my idea, it's your idea. I'm just stating it. So the zoning map, I think there's even a comment in the last topic about that land being in the commercial industrial district, which isn't true, right? It's in the downtown district, I think.
Yeah. Which piece?
The last discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Fish house.
That's
Yeah.
all in the reddish colored zone.
Yeah, which is the downtown waterfront, I think. So we're talking about the two pieces over here. Let's see if I can get my hand instead. We're talking about this brown area and then all this brown area. We've done some work, and you have a map that shows the existing land uses. So we thought, to start out, let's understand what's out there today. So we started with the land or the tax classifications that are done by the county, which there's an infinite number of those classifications. And then we boil them down to what are kind of more typical or traditional land use categories. So that's what this map is showing. And just to follow up on one of the questions from 2 weeks ago, the percentages are commercial 20%, residential 30%. I think it was Commissioner Hawkins that asked that question. Industrial's about 10%, lodging's a little bit less than 10%, maybe 7%, municipal 8%, and then vacant 20%. So just, I know that's information you had asked about.
Yeah.
And so that's this map, what we use this as a base, I think, tonight for most of the discussion. And then I gave the PowerPoint. Basically, what we did so far as findings is we looked at what are the uses that are there today, which there's not, this map didn't exist before this study. What are the uses that are allowed? So if the interest is potentially having residential there, it's really not allowed today. It's commercial and industrial. And there is ways that residential can be there if it's already there or through a conditional use. Just single family. But as you can see, there is more residential there than maybe you would guess, or I would have guessed. And so we looked at uses and then development standards. So development standards have to do with nuisance issues because industrial is allowed here. And then screening, landscaping, vehicle, pedestrian circulation, that sort of thing. So the options that in the memo that we sent out, the options that we're considering right now, and there may be others that you identify, is could portions of the district be rezoned to something else, like H61 or a mixed-use district, which would allow residential to be built? Could it be rezoned, could the industrial portions be rezoned to something else, like the BDA district? These are just options, we're not recommending these. Could the CI district be amended to add residential uses and standards that are appropriate for residential uses? And then lastly is, could the CI district be amended to remove industrial uses to prevent incompatible uses with residential in the future? So those are the four options we've identified to talk about. So I'll put that out there, and then there's these questions and considerations. So we can either go through them.
Let's just take one step back first and make sure we're all trying to get to the same place on this. You know, as Jeff indicated, this was our ask of him. And I think it's worth reminding ourselves why we would consider housing in this commercial zone. And for me, there's this clear indication that there's pressure, economic pressure, to put housing in this zone. And it's kind of the same reason there's pressure to put housing anywhere, because there's land available and there's utilities available. And housing is what the commercial pressure wants to create today. What's the purpose of this zone in our zoning ordinance? It's intended to provide areas suitable for the location of commercial enterprises and light manufacturing and warehousing activities, which require special traffic access. So basically, it's trying to take advantage of the highway being there for commercial, warehousing, and light industrial. I think one of the reasons why there's this pressure to put housing in this zone is there's very little commercial, and there's almost no industrial. And then I would go back and say, when we think about rezoning properties, one of the findings we have to make is that we need more of that zone that we're turning it into, that it's clear that we need more of that zone. And I don't think there'd be any question that it's clear we need more residentially zoned property that's served by utilities. And this property is served by utilities. So we might be putting ourselves in a position where we have to then go through these questions and considerations, but there's a basic kind of consideration here, and that is, are we willing to sacrifice some commercially zoned property or some potential to develop property commercially to let this utilities be used for residential demand that exists today? And some of these questions help us figure out, how can we deal with that? How can we mitigate that loss of commercially available property? Where might else it be able to go? Or can we just kind of change what we think commercial means into something that's a little more realistic to what it might actually happen there? Because industrial isn't going to happen there.
Right.
And do we really want commercial? This is a debate that's happened in say, city council meetings when we're talking about where should City Hall go. Well, if we put it up at the Public Works Garage, maybe it would support some sort of commercial renaissance up there, right? And that is a serious consideration. Do we want that to develop commercially? And as an alternative conversations, we've said, why would we ever want to take away from the pressure to develop commercially downtown? We want the downtown to have that, so that it never loses that vitality. So if we make it easy for somebody to go somewhere else, they're not going to be down here, we might lose that vitality. It's just it seems to me that when we look at this map, that this zone never developed the way we intended it to. It probably never will. And it's an opportunity for us to locate housing in a place where we already have utilities, which is something we've all kind of said we want to do. Yeah, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
It does. It seems like it's happening already without us doing anything.
Yeah.
Via conditional use permit.
Well, most of these uses that are housing in this zone, most of them, not all of them, I think are historic. And they were there before the zoning existed.
Okay.
But there are some that aren't. So, and it kind of morphs too, like the Bouch's property where they had a bunch of small buildings. They built that, and it was lodging when they built it, right? Because they built it to short-term rental for Forest Service workers that were here for a particularly large project. And over time, it turned into residential. And is it actually fit with our zoning? I mean, you could make an argument either way, I think, but do we want to make an argument either way? No, we need the housing, right? And then some of those buildings got moved to the other side of the CI zone, and they're being used as housing, and there was conditional use permits for those.
Okay.
Call them single-family homes, but really, they're just structures being used residentially. It could be, you could call it a cottage courtyard development as much as a single-family home. It doesn't seem to really matter the form to us. We want to support the use.
Yeah.
I have a question about the residential areas on this map. So they're classified residential. Are they being used residential year-round, or are some of these seasonal residential?
For sure, some of them are seasonal. We put a number on the map that kind of showed how many units of residential we thought there were. And if you look, say, all the way on the west side, there are most of those are actually not seasonal. They're residential that people are living in. You know, maybe there's the rock shop cabin spot where that's not their primary residence, but they do stay there sometimes, and they also have rented it out to other people. So it's probably both. Then there's some of these that are used seasonally. I think mostly it's people live in them. Like you go all the way to the east side, and it's definitely that way, right? You've got the old gopher cabins, and then all those that are along the just to the west of it are single-family homes that people live in. They're not seasonal at all.
And I'll just share my opinion on this. I think it's important that we have the discussion. We need more housing. We need more year-round workforce housing. We don't need more housing of people who buy a second home and use it part of the year. We have plenty of that. We have enough houses in Cook County. They're just not available.
So are there tricks that we can put in
Yeah.
the zoning rules that would encourage that type of use other than some other type of use? For sure there are, right? And if I think about the types of projects that folks have pitched in these areas that are housing, you know, not rentals, it's apartments. It's multifamily stuff. Or it's that cottage courtyard type of idea, a lot of small buildings together, which is not as ideal for renting out as lodging, right? It's really designed, purpose-built for using as housing. You're not going to be able to buy an apartment unit and VRBO it. I think the other thing is it's somewhat completely out of our control too. Sure. That folks are desperate to be here, even seasonally. And if, you know, even if we build 10 houses here and 10 people buy them, I don't know if it moves the needle or not, but it's something. It's worth a try, right? Because if they don't buy these, they're going to buy houses in the neighborhoods.
Well, one of the questions, number 3, is kind of getting at that, I would say, is do we limit, because a lot of the housing here is single unit. Even the 24, I guess, is basically cottage courtyard housing is what you're saying, right?
It's got end row housing too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one decision can be that the district is amended and doesn't allow single-family housing. It allows something higher than that, which is going to be less attractive to short-term rental. That could be a consideration.
Yeah.
I think that's what you were getting at, right?
Absolutely. And I think if this was where we think that's a good fit, that maybe we go back to the question of should it even be a conditional use? Maybe we just make it allowed. We've got it set up so that these are bigger lots with bigger setbacks and they're not right next to existing neighborhoods. If we just allow it as a use, maybe that's a way to encourage people to put it here too.
Multifamily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as it sits right now, right, you can, because it's not an R1, you can nightly rental short-term.
You can, yeah.
So-
Any of these houses can be VRBO'd.
Yeah,
Right.
so that's the challenge, is if we don't want to push single-family to those, because that leads to what Stacy's saying could happen.
Well,
Although-
think about like rezone portions of this. The zones that Jeff put on the list are zones where we would allow vacation rentals.
Yeah.
We could rezone it R1 or create an R2 again that maybe has a better chance of success.
Do you
know?
think that we do risk the, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the only,
Are significant changes like that palatable to the owners of the properties though, right?
We
Like
get to
that's-
ask them, you know,
Yeah.
they don't have to say this is, if they say this is not okay with me, we don't necessarily get to do it.
Right.
Like, so that's,
I
but
would
that's
want
part
to.
of the process. We want to talk to them about
Yeah.
it.
Right.
That, you know, think about it this way though. We've already kind of said no to a commercial project in this zone. They were going to come in and build a retail store and we didn't want it, right? Those people want to sell that property. Are they more likely to be able to sell it to somebody who wants to build housing or to somebody who wants to build a retail store?
Yeah.
I mean, this stuff will sell like hotcakes for housing development because it has access to utilities.
Yeah.
So I think there's a good argument to be made that this is a benefit to those property owners. And then, we're gonna ask them what they think.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I would
Go ahead.
definitely want to see, make sure that we're in this, if we end up rezoning it, that, we do preserve what is happening. I mean, that would be, to the degree possible. I mean, like one of the things I was looking at are mixed use, commercial residential that we have already.
Yeah.
And seeing how, if we overlaid that on here, I mean, that works fairly well.
We can
make
still
some
do
adjustments.
restaurants, you can still do
But,
maybe
but
retails.
but I'm saying, like, we could pull things out, we could make another kind of mixed-use residential.
Do you think that there's, do you think that we're limiting commercial capacity then?
I'm
Yes.
concerned about that, yeah. I am
Yes.
concerned about that.
I mean, because I think like this is almost, it's not the same thing, but I question, I was kind of trying to learn where this all came from, and I think it came from you and the issues with what was going on with.
Sarah's project,
Yeah.
Or, I
Well,
mean, Anna's
for
project.
Anna's and there was another one that was right there at the same time. It was kind of the same issue. Like, wait, this is a thing. We got to talk about this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think I mean, I had actually.
What's the commercial you're worried about limiting?
I don't know. I mean, I guess where I was going before I paused was is it the low-hanging fruit of infrastructure? Like, we're changing, which is huge, right? That goes to the last part of our meeting that you refused to watch,
Yes! I said some important things there.
right.
I bet you'll say them again.
Pounded her fist on the table. I think that, yeah, are we, I want to make sure that we're zoning for like that in a logical way and not in a way that just is like, all right. I mean, I don't think, like you said, if we get 10 out of this, we know that 10 houses isn't going to solve the housing issue.
Yeah.
Right.
If the business park and that gets through the EDA and through us and through the council, and that gets changed again, that's also not going to solve it.
No.
And it helps in the interim, but if now all of a sudden our CI zone and our business park are full of, those lots are all built up in their housing, what
Yeah.
if somebody wants to, and I think the world has changed, like the idea of like industrial in the sense of like, we're gonna build a manufacturing facility, because why would you do that when there's, it's expensive to ship stuff here, right?
Yeah.
But I think the world of like FedEx and UPS and like shipping and manufacturing in like a smaller scale type of situation is certainly something that I actually know a couple
Yeah.
companies that I've talked to that are like getting the vibe about like moving their families up here and moving their business and production and,
I mean, that sounds like business park lots to me.
well, right, but what if we fill them up with houses?
They're not going to get filled up with houses
I
based
know,
on the
but-
ask that they're making. I mean, for me, it's a fair thing to think about. And let's take it to like the logical extreme. We build 200 more houses in these commercial zones, right? We're going to need more retail.
Yeah,
Where's it going to go?
yeah,
How about right there?
yeah.
How about right there? How about right there? I mean, I can think of 5 vacant lots downtown right now that if there was demand that was generated by more houses, that maybe they would develop into retail.
Yeah.
Like, that wouldn't be terrible. And then what if we find ourselves in need of more space for whatever, right? Like that seems like a good problem. This thing that we need more room for housing is actually, as much problem as it is, it's still the good side of the problem.
All right, yes.
Yeah. Although I hear what you're saying too, but again, I think that could be addressed, we could have it as a, that it's something that we can, permit or something like that, but not.
I think that if both those things that I mentioned and that Mike kind of expanded on, I mean, I think both of those things, if and when that were actually to come to happen, like, we're not all gonna be here, right? I mean, it isn't gonna be an overnight thing. But, again, thinking to the future, like, why the hell did they change all back in 22, they changed all the CI into this situation versus why do they let these buildings go so close to the lake?
I wouldn't.
Well, because they didn't want to run water up the hill.
We just disregarded the. I mean, look, this zone has existed since 1971, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It hasn't happened yet. So, smart planning doesn't always pan out either. Like, there is always some sort of gradual need to move towards what your real issues are today as well. And I think if we do find a way to support a few dozen more residential units, that's absolutely serving the future of this community.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, can we then, let's get into some of these questions, because I do think that now they will feed right into what you're talking about.
Yeah, so the first three are about uses. So I guess we just want to get your sense if you thought, could some of the, there's two sides to it. So could some of those areas be rezoned to a different district, and then the CI district remains, and, you decide to add residential or you don't. So, I would say the east side has a more of a commercial focus than the west side, and more potential maybe, just based on what's over there. When you look at what the classifications starting with the county come up as, the orange ones on the west actually come up as residential because they have a residential unit on them.
Yeah.
So it looks like it's mostly residential and vacant, and then there's a couple, commercial things down at the end there. But I guess we just want to get your input starting up front. Do you see some of those CI district areas just being rezoned to something else? The other way to go with it would be to say the parts of them go to R1 or a new R2 or a mixed-use district, and that's how you allow residential, and you don't change CI.
I see what you're saying. So just, well, yeah, because it's R1 right above, so.
Yeah, we just,
I have a
Because
problem
you've
with
got-
R1.
You've got lodging in there
Oh,
already,
excuse.
right? So you've got
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lens and, yeah,
I mean, all those orange ones are
Nelson's. and-
cabins.
Yeah.
People also can live there and do in some of them, like in the house, a proprietor lives there.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would think that, we would find that section one where we want to make sure that we wouldn't just turn it to R1,
No.
right? That wouldn't work.
I don't think that's right, yeah.
But we could turn it to mixed use.
Yeah.
And it would
Except,
fit.
then you go back to,
That's how it's being used now anyway, right?
yeah, but I have a problem with the VRBOs and mixed-use district.
Yeah, but we can make rules to accommodate that. too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and it's allowed here now, right? So even if we continue to allow it and more of them show up, and more residential units show up as well, like, is that a compromise that would work for you? Or do we want to just make sure absolutely no more rental units show up here?
Right now, we are so desperate for year-round housing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to make sure nothing gets used for anything other than that.
What if there was an even trade? Like, what if it was a 1 unit of lodging shows up and 1 unit of residential shows up? Like, is there some kind of mix like that works for you?
Well, maybe.
Okay.
I like
Yeah.
the multi-family angle.
Yeah, I do too. I think the multifamily option
And I
and
think it
all
makes
this type
sense.
stuff.
Yeah, it
Because then
makes
you
sense.
can like limit, so these, there's historical, like Nelson Trail, there's little clusters of home there. And so those that are there, like, okay, those could potentially change hands from year-round residents to, if people decided to turn into nightly rentals. And we're not gonna take that away from them, because maybe some of those people bought those things in that understanding that that's how they could use it.
Yeah, I don't think so, but.
Well, I can think of one, I mean, the old, whatever that little, building right on the highway that was it Health, not Health and Human Services? There was
Oh,
some-
HDC.
Oh, the
Yeah.
HDC, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, that's a nightly rental,
Yeah.
which I'm assuming they bought it to turn it into that, because it only happened a year and a half ago.
I would assume so.
Yes, so, but if we limit it then to multifamily in the rest of it, then, like you say, the protection is almost baked within the design or the build out of it.
But it wouldn't necessarily prevent the short-term option, right?
Yeah.
No.
But by making it
Just
less
makes it
desirable,
less
then
likely,
it's,
yeah.
it's not
Yeah,
as, I don't know how it works.
Because I don't know how you, yeah. How would you, could you?
I don't know.
Well,
I'm
let's
not a
look-
big fan of limiting
So is
one
short-term
property
rental-
versus another
Right.
anyway, right? It's like, I don't like
It's not
that.
even
There's already
conditional.
existing
It is.
uses for that in the
It is.
zone and have
But
been
not in
for an
residential.
I almost
eternity.
feel like,
It's just not allowed.
I personally
Right,
feel
right,
like,
right.
not that I don't care about that, but I think like if we can encourage housing, period, in
Right.
that district, especially on the west side. East side, I'm a little bit, maybe less so, but I'm talking about that west side. Again, like, if we get a handful out of that, I think that's great, and we can just like focus in the R1 and we know the language is right, we know it protects
Yeah.
what we're trying to protect.
So more shifting it to making residential a more allowable option, provided it's multifamily, and leave it
Yeah.
however it happens, it
That's
happens.
my,
And then focus on R1 and getting,
Getting sewer and water up in all our R1
well,
districts.
talking about that, yeah,
Yeah.
just an all around. and-
Starting a
I
committee for
mean,
that.
yeah.
I understand the conversation. I've certainly had it with Anton over the years.
I didn't bring it up.
Oh, yeah, you did. But that's the hard way, right? And I'm not afraid of doing the hard way, but we shouldn't just skip the easy way because it's easy, right? It's there. We can
Right.
do this.
Well, and the hard way isn't gonna go fast, right? So
No.
I think it's important, I think
I
this
mean-
does that, right? I mean, this does that in some way, like, because again, if living in town and developing infrastructure, because that is density and that's a better way to get housing versus everybody on 5 acres and a septic and a well, like, multifamily is like the next step from that, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, okay, so maybe this isn't where you're gonna be forever, but like if this gets people into the community and like, oh yeah, they can get an apartment or a townhome or a twin home or whatever
Mhm.
those allowable uses are, like, fantastic, right? Because then we know that we've got people that are gonna want to, when we start this process to push more infrastructure, that we know that there'll be that kind of cyclical thing. It's not like, okay, well, we gotta do this and we're gonna be here forever. Like, there is that mobility,
Yep.
right, in
Right.
housing.
They'll come into their apartment now,
Yeah.
and they're gonna want a house later.
Oh, they're gonna stay here and, yeah.
Hopefully. So Highway 61 corridor is an option to use. Isn't a good fit then? It says residential above the first floor, right? And it
Yeah,
doesn't say
that's-
anything about what type of residential. We didn't have the good residential language when we wrote these commercial zones. Mixed use is a little better.
That was one
And
I
we
was
made some
looking
changes
at.
to mixed use when we did the residential zones to try and make its language conform. Now I gotta find it though, because we changed everything else too. We allow one family, two family, small apartments without a conditional use permit in the mixed use. So it's closer. It's still not exactly
Yeah.
what we're talking about, but if we just wanted to go with an existing zone, retail is allowed, bed and breakfast is allowed, small scale lodging, which is what most of those resorts would qualify under, is allowed, but as a conditional use permit.
Yeah.
But at least we would change it to a zone where, you know, there's a path for them to do what they're doing, rather than it's just not even on the list at all.
Yeah.
And then large apartments are, your row houses, cottage court, all that stuff is
included.
you need to get a conditional use
Well, by
permit for it, but
conditional
it's
use.
there. So mixed use is closer. If we
Yeah.
wanted to just
Yeah.
go with it and pick the spots where we think this might fit, that's an easy path to talk to people about, I think.
Yeah, and I like this one too, because it also includes those sort of more industrial things that are going on, because it allows for services, including, oh no, it says
Well,
excluding.
excluding auto-oriented
Auto-oriented
services.
Oh.
So that's where we had the Highway 61 and the mixed use were different, because we still wanted to say, if there's a business that having people drive to it is part of its core
Mhm.
existence, it needs to be on the highway. It can't be in the neighborhoods.
Got it.
Auto-oriented services. You can walk to the art colony, you don't have to drive there, right? But you've got to drive to Napa, or the car wash, or the gas station, right? Those places you bring in your car to, because
Yeah.
So that's the reason mixed use wouldn't work, right?
well, it's something about it that we'd have to either make a change to mixed use, or we'd have to make a modification to this zone, or we'd have to just live with the fact that we're excluding auto-oriented services from a certain section of this area, which might work. I wouldn't see somebody putting a gas station at Nelson's Travelers Rest anyway.
No, but I was thinking about
Benny's.
up there right now.
And maybe that is, well, actually,
So, like conditional use,
it is not an auto-oriented business right today, it's not. So, I mean,
But-
they're not doing it. Somebody's doing something different.
So
Oh.
using the.
But they're allowed to do it.
What do you mean they're doing something different? Gideon's up there, right? Am I missing something?
Yeah, but he's not, I mean, there's other business up there.
But
Yeah,
it's-
I don't know whether I'm speaking out
Mechanicing.
of school here, but.
Right?
That's what I thought he was still doing.
But
there.
so that scenario would be applying MU in places, but retaining
But-
CI
But maybe we
in
could
other
just.
places, right?
Right. We can find the spots where we think this, and particularly where it's already residential, or it's vacant, or it's lodging. And like those spots right away make sense that mixed use would fit.
Mixed use, our current mixed use
Yeah.
residential. Okay.
And then
Yeah, I think even if CI doesn't add residential, there's also the opportunity to change it because you don't really have industrial. It doesn't really need to be called
Yeah.
commercial industrial.
It needs a
right?
refresh either way.
And then there's no goofy setbacks when you run mixed use into commercial, industrial, or nothing to,
No,
okay.
yeah, that's one of the beauties of it too. Mixed use is a commercial zone.
Yeah.
So we don't even have to change that rule, although we still may decide to change that rule.
I mean, we might
Yeah.
want to have, yeah.
So then, what we're faced with is maybe three different paths here. We change some of the zoning from CI to mixed use. We modify some of the rules in CI to allow for some kind of housing, because it's already there. We might as well deal with that. And maybe deal with that setback issue or deal with some other issues so that there's still commercial zones out there. They might want to get developed residentially and we'll let them, but they could also be developed commercially. And we've got a way to deal with that somehow. And then we also just have to kind of refresh what we're calling the zone, even if we keep CI. And, because industrial's not, it's a misnomer. And the list probably needs to get adjusted, and so we could do something like that.
Yeah.
I can see it more clearly on the west side of town, for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
But I would also say there's some pressure on the Gunflint Trail Highway 61 to really go either way, right? It's a good intersection, and it's prime for some use. Something can be successful there. And we've had folks talk to us about developing housing in that area. But I don't think Steve has talked to us about developing housing in that area, right? So like the Lashinsky piece of property probably still wants to keep all their commercial options open, but across the street, all we've talked to people about is residential stuff. So maybe there's a chunk in there even that we at least put on the table and then, invite folks to come talk to us about.
Yeah.
Any other comments about the three uses questions, the first three? I think Mike kind of summarized that well, that even if CI does not have a major residential component, the purpose statement doesn't.
No.
It should be
Needs a
updated
refresh.
in any case. So if not, then 4 through 10, I guess, are about development standards. So just wanted to get your insights on if residential comes into more commercial districts or the CI district, do you think there should be larger lot and setback standards than in the R1? So, we worked a lot on those setbacks. Today, the CI district has setbacks that are smaller because they're commercial, they're not residential. And they're on Highway 61, so, you know, residential on Highway 61 could work, but the setbacks probably would need to be different, it seems like.
How are the setbacks different in mixed use versus CI?
There are no setbacks in
I
mixed
think they're the
use.
same.
I was
which is-
There are no lot minimums. I
Yeah.
mean, with the residential uses, we do have the standards we established, right? In the R1 zone. And I think we would enforce those here too. That small lots, you know, quite a bit smaller than what's going on up there on most of those lots anyway. And if we're concerned about these issues, it would probably point us away from using mixed use and rather either creating some kind of R2 zone where, we allow resort lodging and apartment buildings, and they need to be bigger area, bigger setbacks, spread out, or we don't use a new zone and we just redo CI completely and call it some sort of large-scale mixed use where you can do all the commercial stuff you used to be able to do, but you can also do large-scale residential. Like, they both are okay up here, and wherever you want to do them is fine. And then we say 10,000 or 15,000 or however big we want the lots to be. And again, it's back to the apartments wouldn't be a conditional use, they'd just be allowed. But they'd be allowed on big lots with bigger setbacks and other requirements that we'd write into it. So that's kind of a different path to go down.
Mhm. Yeah.
Which one do you like better?
Well, I
The second one.
you guys spend so much time and energy reducing lot sizes and
I know.
going for density,
Just like,
right?
we
Now we
just
have the
got rid of that
opportunity for
R2,
like
didn't
the
we?
primo dense, and now we're like, geez, we really want that?
I don't think you would,
But, yeah.
there's more density in a 40-unit apartment building on a big lot.
Yeah.
Because the math isn't just how much can we fit into this fixed space. We've got that whole city to deal with, right? And a whole bunch of it's empty. So if we find a place where that 40-unit thing can go, we've increased density significantly, even if we told them they have to be on a half an acre, right? Or an acre and a half, or whatever we
Because that
tell
would
them.
be a 40-unit complex is 2 full city blocks to accommodate the same amount of houses. Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, at our standard lot minimums.
yeah. So we're talking about 6+ acres.
Right. So you could, yeah.
So I don't think we have to feel too embarrassed about it. It does make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the way the density is handled in the code now is it's housing types, so, you know, whatever we do, we're gonna say these housing types are allowed, and it doesn't really call out, that means it's this many units per acre. It's really, is it,
This type.
yeah, is it cottage courtyard
Yeah.
apartments?
Yeah.
Is it
Well,
small
that's-
apartments? Is it big
That's what I'm more
apartments?
thinking, because that old 40-unit apartment building, that doesn't work anymore, right? I mean, there's a reason nobody builds new hotels anymore, like, the math doesn't work, right? We've heard that from some of the guys on the West End. It just doesn't work, and if it doesn't work for short-term lodging, it probably doesn't work for long-term lodging either. But that row houses, those smaller courtyard type settings, I can see that being much more likely.
Yeah.
And that's where that density becomes a little bit.
Yeah. Well, then if we do bring in mixed use to this zone, there's actually another zone, now that I'm looking at this. The crazy-ass Fifth Avenue Resort Commercial Neighborhood Zone.
And that's already been updated with all the uses, right?
Yeah.
The residential uses.
Yeah,
Isn't that where
and
you
we
live?
could potentially try to modify that one a little bit to make it fit down here, and maybe it would, because it's got a pretty eclectic list on it. Maybe not. But
Well, and that.
a large apartment, we say the minimum lot size is 10,000 or 1,000 per unit, whichever is greater. So if you want to build a 40-unit apartment right now, you got to have 40,000 square feet. That doesn't seem that big to me, but but we could use these and just add to the end of this list.
Sure.
Whatever we call this zone, this table also works for that. And we wouldn't have to make any changes to it. And then they could still do cottage courtyard at the same small scale. And I honestly don't think they will. Like that, for me, a developer that's gonna have, I've got an acre, we don't have the kind of developers that say, can I get 60 units on this thing, right? That's not how we generally happens up here. Instead, we get like, all right, I got the ability to do 3, so I'm gonna start with that and see what happens. So I still think even if we allow the density, we're not gonna get full on density in these vacant and undeveloped places, not right away. And if we do, it's gonna be, a 30-unit row house.
Well, and could they be allowed instead of conditional? Because in R1, it got to that point where a lot of them were conditional. Some of them were conditional.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That you kind of asked and answered that when you went through the zoning change. I prefer to find something that we're sure we want to allow and not make it conditional, because then you don't have this, right? And this was good. I don't mean to say it was bad, but there were issues that are just not a part of what your conversation was that were really the issues. And how do you ever write code around that? Like, you can't.
Right. Yeah.
So was RCN put in place when that was still the Gunflint Trail, or was it?
Yeah.
So it was meant to be a high-traffic road in a way, right?
It still is one, so, yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
was, I think because it was the Gunflint Trail, it was also developed as a lot of rental units. Those particularly those
Yeah.
lower 2 blocks are just chock full of cabins and,
Hotel.
yeah. And then you got that other stuff too.
So that has potential then.
Yeah, but then
Seems
we've
like-
got, government buildings and laundromats.
That's right.
Terry needs some
Dairy.
competition.
Yeah.
Okay, so I heard some people say, and maybe I only heard you say it, Stacy, I prefer the second idea, which is not use mixed use, instead morph the entire zone into some sort of large-scale mixed use, where we would just add some of these housing uses as allowed, and maybe it's only the high-density ones. We wouldn't allow single and duplexes, but we would allow apartments, cottage courtyard developments, row houses, all that stuff.
That's where I'm leaning this moment.
Okay.
So no duplexes.
We can put anything you want on the list.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I hate to,
I just hate to see that all fill up with single-family homes,
Yeah.
because we have other places single-family homes can go.
yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if we do, though.
Yes, we do.
Oh, we need to.
They might not be within the city limits, but,
Well, okay, that's a fair point.
Yeah, so today the CI district allows them as a conditional use, but you could change it to say it's something above that. That's
Yeah.
allowed, not single family.
So what we then, to build on that, we have a 10,000 square foot minimum in this zone now, and the question that Jeff's asking us is, would we keep that, or would we change it for residential uses? Would we go back to the table that we already have for residential uses and just use those areas?
Which
It
would
should
be-
be relative to the amount of units being put in.
Yeah.
I like that idea a lot. That makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, so using the table, essentially. Yeah.
So if we did just add residential uses to this zone, turn it into some kind of large-scale mixed use, we're allowing multifamily residential at the same lot size, setback, other developmental rules that we've already established in the residential zones.
Yeah.
By
And we're
housing type.
allowing,
By housing type.
by the housing type.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we're allowing a slightly modified list of commercial uses that takes care of what's already there,
Yes.
that allows for retail and services, what keeps the 10,000 square foot rule for that. And then maybe that last question is, the structures from our districts is 50. If we're saying this is a mixed use district, I think we can make it clear that setback just doesn't exist here. So if you build your row houses, that person can build their retail building 15 feet from the side lot line. You know, you can be 8 feet from it, and they can be 15 feet, and that's that.
Yes.
I guess the question for me is,
Use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess-
Mixed use and.
yeah, I guess the question I have is, you know, even on the east side, and Mike, you brought this up, some of the uses that are out there today, if somebody came and wanted to build row houses next to some of those uses, would that be compatible? Or should there be some screening required
Yeah.
between those two uses? You know, and that, you know, today, the case would be the new use would be residential, so I know Mike and I have talked about, are you applying the screening or the buffering to the residential uses or to the non-residential?
Right.
That's a question.
Or to the new uses. I mean, I don't know how to write a good set of rules for this, but I do know that there's folks doing, you know, chainsawing and firewood processing. And that's not something I want next to my house all day long. And there's folks that have scrap yards. And we already talked about this. Like, it's not just, I don't want to live next to a scrapyard. It's the scrapyard operator saying, I don't want people
Yeah.
getting into my stuff. Like, you know, I was here first, and I don't think it's fair to let them, you know, trip on my things or, you know, even be bothered by it. So is there still that argument, is the east side different than the west side? And maybe we don't change the east side at all. And maybe or if we do rewrite the zone into a mixed use, that's an open question. How do we manage the chainsaw operator against the apartment building or row houses? And I don't really know how to do that yet.
Well, there's only, you know, even the way you look at it as it sits right now, it's like apartment building, single-family home, chainsaw.
Yeah.
You know what I
Heavy
mean?
equipment
Like,
yard.
They're already heavy
House,
equipment yard.
bar,
Right.
apple orchard. I mean, it's just like, this seems to be okay without any zoning, too.
Cottage courtyard.
Yeah.
Another truck yard, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
What a mess.
Yeah, it seems like it's doing its thing
But,
already.
so I think part of what we're wrestling with too is that 50-foot setback. That could be a barrier to development that,
Can't we
because all of these
eliminate
lots
that?
are next to a residential district, or most of them are.
Right.
And so there's this 50-foot setback, which I think we
Well,
think is
it's from
outdated, right?
Commercial uses, and it's a structure setback from residential zone property.
Right.
And, yeah, so then, it doesn't have to be an issue inside of this district that we create, but
Right.
it still
Right.
is an issue at the edge of it where they abut residential properties. So if we do find a way to get Chainsaw Guy and Row House okay as neighbors, then we can use that anywhere. Or,
Yeah,
you know, we
yeah.
can just like get rid of the rule altogether and let people sort it out.
Well, we think the 50-foot number is too big.
Yeah.
Yeah. that
We're
was-
not seeing that anywhere else too much. So if that's going to go down, that's one thing. And then if screening's required, I guess that could be done a number of different ways. You know, and in Grand Marais, do you want to see fences? Do you want to see trees? Do you want to see landscaping? I mean, you know,
Mhm.
suburbs would have fences, and maybe that works there. I don't know if that's what Grand Marais wants, is fences between things. Might be okay.
I mean, I don't want to tell people they have to.
Right.
I'd like to find a way for people to be creative about it.
Yeah.
So give them options.
Yeah. Well, let's just talk about your last question next, and then we can go to bed.
Yeah, so the last one is, that 11 is, you know Grand Marais better than I do, for sure. So are there other cities that you think of that have this mix of things going on, and they have residential, even new residential that you've seen, and you think we should look at them? So I put down a list of places that I'm aware of that I think we can learn from. but it's a short list so far. So if there's other places you think of that, where there's a good mix of residential with other things, we can try to learn from those.
A good mix. Superior, Wisconsin, that's where my son is living. I am just amazed every time I drive through there with the mixed use in certain parts of that. And,
And the setback from the highway?
yeah, and I was like, why did they make those setbacks so big? That is just wrong.
So it's not necessarily
Yes.
a good example?
No,
Superior?
it's not a good example. That's what I want to try to
It's not a good
avoid.
example of, well,
It's got its charms.
yep. And it's bars.
Yeah. I'm glad you crossed borders though, because I was feeling like this is a little Minnesota centric. Is there? I mean, there's a cute little town in Greece that I think does a great job of this, but you can't really drive in it. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have
I
you-
think, I don't know if I'm trying to think about that interaction in those, I guess I haven't been to Lake City, but like in Red Wing and the others, like what your approach, like how that mix is. I can't really even think. It's so hard to look at. I mean, Two Harbors, there's like the heavy stoplight section, and then you get underneath the train trestle, and then it's like, but
it's a pretty short chunk that I think would fit
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
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 Once you get
But
to
then
the
Red Wing,
commercial, it's commercial.
There's a lot
Yeah.
you can see there.
I can think of a lot. I think, just driving on 2-lane state highways through Minnesota and you get to a small town.
Yeah.
And how many of them do I think, oh, this is really cool? Most of them I think, what did they add an extra 2 lanes for? Now I'm going 30. I could have used those back there when I needed to pass that guy, but now it's weird. But what I picture in my mind is places that were residential that are starting to turn into commercial, whereas a mixed use that makes sense to me, that looks cool, that seems to work well. And I don't think that's what's going on here, right? We're doing the opposite. We're taking a
Yeah.
place that we wanted to be commercial and sometimes is and sometimes isn't, and instead want it to be residential. So what would we picture? Like, what does that residential look like to you? It's suddenly we don't have to think about a mixed use district. We can think about a residential district anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
of it as all too different than what it currently is from like Nelson's and Lund's and, you know what I mean? Like that sort of style up and down with lots of woods around and,
I think that there's a predisposition to, if you are gonna put residential, to wanna set yourself back anyways, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that which is dictated obviously by lot size and lot depth, but it seems pretty consistent running through there, short of a couple stragglers.
pretty deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
I don't
why,
know if I can think of any.
that's why I brought up Lake City. I mean, I grew up in that area, so, but, they call themselves the South Shore sometimes. I don't know if you knew that, but.
And they're a SIMPA member, so they got that going for them.
But it's Highway 61 along Lake Pepin,
Yeah.
and it's commercial, it's a downtown, they do have these,
But on the north side, they have those houses all right there, right?
yeah, and they have 3-4 story buildings, and, I don't know what they are. Some, I'm sure are rental, some are second homes,
Mhm.
because they're right on the lake, they're beautiful views.
Mhm.
So it's a scale that, I'm not sure that's what Grand Marais wants, but it's in a horrible scale either.
Well, and I hope it's what we want, because we wrote our code to allow it, and we did in 1971, write our code to allow that type of development. With a lot of lots with no setbacks and 30-foot to 35-foot buildings that really can
Right.
be that
Right.
very thing. And yeah, if we don't want that, we should probably make some changes to our zoning ordinance, 'cause
Yeah.
and in this zone, that there's such a diversity of like what type of housing you might want to put there too, because it's either right next to an existing commercial entity, or it's got great views, or it's there's not much going on there, and it's kind of a blank canvas. I think that I like the strategy of just taking our existing residential work we did and just overlaying it here.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree. Took a lot of time.
Well, what should we do next, Jeff?
We're gonna recommend something, right?
Yeah.
But it sounds like it would be a mix of, I don't know if it's gonna be options or it's a mix of some rezoning and
What?
some amending CI.
I think what we'll start with is, what if we just change the whole zone into something different that has these residential uses that are allowed?
Yeah.
I think that's,
And if, as we're doing that, we come up with a bunch of, ooh, that doesn't work, then we'll start thinking about options. But hopefully, we'll come to an upcoming meeting with a sketched out idea of what we want to do as a recommendation.
Yeah.
Now, the next step would be to have some public discussions about that and write ordinance language and have public hearings and, do the whole works.
do it again.
Like we always do.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great.
Great. So with that, I would say we're adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.